How much of that were we recording?
Oh, we didn't get in much of that. So
Thank,
it's all good.
Thank you for not recording my racism against Vikings.
No,
It's okay because I am one, though. It's fine.
yeah, we're back. We're energized. We got some snacks. We got some water. We're ready to take on the big three at E3 2016.
Ooh, well done.
Right.
Thank you.
Very nice, very nice.
And we're going to launch into it with the one of the big three that wasn't anywhere near the convention for their presentation itself, but that's a different issue entirely. Nintendo.
It's all about time frame this time around.
Mm-hmm. And also they've been enjoying the their video presentations of like, 'cause then they get to really like tailor their message and stuff like that, which I can totally understand. And a lot of companies are trying to do that now. He's like, we don't need to be at this one event. We can do our own thing and come along. But
That's true.
The
Treehouse of Horror.
not so much this time.
Horror is, you're right. Plural.
It's probably more along the lines Treehouse of mild disappointment in certain respects.
No. I kid, actually.
Do tell.
I was fairly impressed a lot. So I'm not going to say about what.
Okay.
That's for you to guess.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I think one of the points that was I put under the category of mildly disappointing was the fact that the NX was not announced at this E3 event. They do say it is still in work, but they don't have anything to show just yet. So there's that, which means the Wii U gets a few more years of life for whatever.
Well, they still have a date for it. And as far as I understand, they haven't pushed it back.
That's true.
Choosing not to talk about it.
When is that date?
I cannot remember. But what I remember about it was that it was an odd time slot from normal, because usually they try and schedule stuff for holidays, and I believe it was like mid-spring, something like that. They were planning the release of the new system. So
for next year, or I
believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. So that should be pretty exciting when that drops. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
In the not unexpected news, it looks like they'll be leaning on their 3DS, the success of the 3DS, to be kind of one of their largest section of their money pie. It sounds like, but that's
not the part I was excited about. By the way, I'll let you eliminate them one by one.
Okay. We'll eventually get down to the one that he's excited about.
Yeah.
There is. If you're into if you just got to catch them all, there are 2 new Pokemon games, Sun and Moon.
Neither of which, the ones that
You don't strike me as a big Pokemon person.
It's fair. It's the Viking in me.
The one thing that almost...
I would think that would be good. We're going to catch them all. We're going to get everything.
Yeah.
Like that's...
You don't need to catch them all. It's more strategic.
Save some for later.
Catch the ones that are important.
All right, there you go.
Like case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The one of the things that almost everyone is agog about was the trailer for the next Zelda game, which is titled Legend of Zelda: The Tale
Snake Eater.
No. Snake Eater. Man. No. What was it called again?
Legend of Zelda Monster Hunter.
Zelda, here, take my money.
Yeah. That's what most people call it.
Yeah, another colon, please.
Yeah. I think it's like called Tale of the Wind or something like that. Shape of the Wind. It's something.
Breath of the Wind?
Breath of the Wind. Yes.
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
There's no wind in this one. They did enough wind in the last one.
And the one before that.
That's true.
Yeah.
They're winded
and the
out.
one before that.
They're unwinded or unwound.
Yeah, and
something.
And
so clearly you were not excited about this that much then.
I didn't. I wasn't able to watch as much of it as I wanted to, as I had intended to. And I misplaced the name
Spoilers.
pretty heavily.
This is the one that I was excited about.
One of from what I was able to catch of the trailer work for it, it is one of the first with a much more open world than you're used to seeing in some of the more contemporary Zelda games. It's like it really does feel like
It's basically not Zelda, is what it is.
Not as much Zelda as other Zeldas have been. Yeah,
Barring the very first one.
mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
So it's going back to those roots, kind of, or
yeah, in terms
Using them as a template,
Okay.
and then building off of them with other IPs, kind of.
okay.
So yeah, I was trying to make a pointed joke with the two references that I made before about the Snake Eater and the Monster Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they basically pulled stuff directly from those games, and they're how this functions, which is so not Zelda. You have to keep track of your health and repair it by eating
Okay.
wildlife for the most part.
Okay.
There's a interesting cooking system in place. I'm not
Okay.
even kidding.
Okay.
There's a cooking system in place
So it's
where you can combine roasted meats along with various vegetation that you find in order to craft better food that will give you more hit points or hearts, along with maybe a special quality here and there. So yeah, not Zelda. It's a little bit of Cooking Mama in it.
a little Harvest Moon was more what I was thinking, but yeah.
Okay, fair. That's where I was pulling Snake Eater, but
Yeah, Peanut Gallery mentions that's like the insects in Skyward Sword. You can mix them together to make extra potions and stuff like that. So
okay, there's a precedence for it that I was unaware of.
being the huge Zelda fan you are.
Yeah.
The biggest.
Well, I still try and keep like at least in touch with the general mechanics of this stuff because I know it is popular. But the other thing they lifted from Snake Eater apparently is keeping track of how cold or hot you are. And you have to regulate your body temperature accordingly, which ends up making an interesting system for whether you're removing or adding clothes or not, because it actually changes how your character is depicted. So you can run around pantsless.
Whoa.
And it might be advantageous from time to time.
If it's really hot,
Yeah.
It's getting hot in here.
or you get wet, you want to take your pants
That
off.
is another
Moisturize.
solution to the heat problem, apparently. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that I would have never guessed a Zelda game would ever touch. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
if you're willing to put on extra clothes.
Is that also what you mentioned? The Monster Hunter.
The
thing?
Monster Hunter side of stuff is the interaction with the different creatures around. Oh, geez, I was trying to remember the ways that you can try and sneak around stuff. There's a crafting system that your weapons now have hit points, a la a lot of different RPGs that are out there. So your weapons will fail and go bad, and you need to replace them with newly crafted things or things that you pick up from other people.
So in a lot of ways, Zelda is now. This Zelda is finally becoming the RPG that
It's going whole hog RPG. It's
that
pretty
everyone
interesting.
kind of thought it was, even though it was more of an adventure game in some of its earlier incarnations.
The most interesting part to me, a lot of those things are, like I mentioned, sort of lifted from other stuff that exists out there that actually is fairly close to it's Nintendo's ecosystem. Effectively, it exists elsewhere, but that's where it's most popular. especially Snake Eater. So maybe not that one so much.
Yeah.
But they have a traversal system that's really interesting because they have climbing cliff faces just like in like Tomb Raider and stuff like that.
Okay.
Except you aren't limited by anything. So, like Tomb Raider, there's only certain types of textures that you look out for that you can climb.
Right.
Yeah.
That your ice axes will actually impale.
Right. In this, you can literally, if you can see a vertical surface, you can climb it. The way that they regulate that is you only have so much stamina. And so if you overexert yourself, you become tired and get some negative effects and whatnot. So trying to climb a cliff face might not be the best thing to do if you know that there's a big scary thing on the other side of it. So it can create some interesting balance that I've never seen before.
Yeah, that the need to balance out Link's sort of stats, as it were, is that's something that is a bit new. Like normally it's just like new things, keep exploring more space. Don't really worry about the specifics of what's going on with Link.
That said, there are fairly standard things as far as the entire Zelda game structure. There's a ton of items that function in very special ways. It seems to be a bottomless pocket in which to carry said items that doesn't seem to affect you.
It's a bag of holding.
Right. So yeah, the mechanics that I saw with some of the items are pretty neat. There's magnetic tools that allow you to toss around anything magnetic like it's a toy. And that's the main one. The other thing that I understood is that they will have bombs in this, but it is it's not a classic like chemical bomb. It's built off of apparently the main story element of the story of
The game.
Yes. So yeah, the land seems to have a bunch of these temples and ruins scattered around it that has odd blue energy and either coursing through it or kind of wormed into the structure of it and whatnot. Some of your tools seem to be powered by this stuff, which allows for an element of technology that we haven't seen in games like this before. The other side of it is that it seems to have explosive qualities, which is what brings the bombs into play. So if you have a round chunk of the stuff, you can roll it like a normal bomb. If you have a square chunk of the stuff, it works like a sticky bomb, where you can plant it and blow it up when you want to.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
So, it's two questions for you. Which
Yes.
Maybe, depending upon grammar, could be one sentence.
Okay.
Or one question. Did you put your pre-order down for the NX, or did you go out and buy a Wii U for
No,
this?
neither.
Okay.
See, but I'll be honest. When I see the footage of what it's going to look like with an NX, and depending on how interesting that console is, it's going to make that console a lot more tempting for me. Because they showed the footage based on the Wii U right now, and it's a very pretty game already. It's relying on Wind Waker style cell shading, except with a little bit more of a grown-up style. Somebody pointed out that the original Japanese artwork for the first game, it's basically trying to completely pull off that artwork as the entire game. So
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
The gallery is doing a little dance.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. I'm generally not all that excited for these games, but they've changed it so much that it puts it in a realm where it sounds interesting to me again. Like, I remember the only one that I played was the very first one, and I only had access to it like once in a blue moon, and so I but when I played it, I was pretty passionate about it. So having it kind of go back to that, where you have a very large world and it's not holding your hand at all, is really interesting to me.
I what little I saw, it looks phenomenal, and I'm excited to try that.
That's
world
not the
out.
way you made it sound a second ago.
I said from what little I saw, I was like, I couldn't remember, like I misplaced the name.
That's fine.
And that was like, and that was flustering. But yeah, Nintendo always seems to generally, when it comes to their own IP, they'd usually come out pretty strong with their own with their new titles. And I am curious to see what the NX will be able to accomplish, because that sounds like a pretty cool little system.
As am I.
Especially considering that they've been able to pull some pretty good mileage out of the Wii U that I was not expecting. But
Oh, really?
quiet.
Have
here.
any citations?
Yes, right now.
Okay.
The Wii U was interesting, but I feel like it never quite lived up. It not unlike the Wii. It had a lot of really neat ideas, and it only was able to like get. It felt like about 85% the way there. Like that last 10 to 15% was just that. Was like it was really cool. It just wasn't quite finished in some ways, and it's because partly because they're pushing the interactivity envelope, and so they're spinning in different directions and stuff like that. But I'm
it had some cool ideas that I was really surprised that they didn't try and sell to very specific groups of people, like especially since obviously Nintendo kind of functions a fair amount off of the nostalgia bombs. I'd think that it would have worked really well, especially for like new parents, having the smaller screen that you could much more effectively be watching or being near your child and still enjoy a game here and there, versus the scenarios that I keep hearing over and over again on Xbox, where I just hear a child screaming at the top of its lungs while one or the other parent pleads for the other parent to take care of the problem. Thank you, Xbox community. I love you, but sometimes.
benefits of the Kinect as a microphone at times.
Yeah, that's probably the main thing that has been a problem in those lines.
Anything else from Nintendo?
There was,
because I didn't catch it. So
Okay.
There's there are also going to be the other games that will be coming out is a new Dragon Quest and a new Monster Hunter. So they'll have those titles as well for the 3DS. And it sounds like they're also, I can't remember if I don't remember seeing any, but I know that they're still doing a lot of work on mobile, trying to see what they can do with a mobile game on like the non-Nintendo branded devices. So
yeah, I don't think I've mentioned this in any of the shows. Maybe very briefly, is that the app that they created.
Oh yeah.
The Miitomo.
Yeah, Miitomo.
It's surprisingly effective to me. I was badgered into downloading it by a friend. I really wasn't, but yeah, it's definitely cutesy to the max, but in all the right ways. It's very endearing and sells itself quite well.
Did they mention any of that stuff at the?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing much about it. It's one of the things that like it's on their radar, but I think since they're not entirely sure where they sit on that front, since the 3DS still sells really well, I don't think they're quite ready to like start undercutting that particular cash flow.
Well, mainly I know when they'd mentioned in previous E3 that they were going to be at least thinking about stuff like that everybody was completely dumbfounded how they do it without kind of breaking the brand. And the reason why I mentioned the Witomo thing is that they've so far been pretty smart about how they did it, and I didn't see anything new this time around, but if they are planning more stuff like that, I have a fair amount of confidence they'll do interesting, pretty good things.
Yeah, I'll bet. Cool. So I think that rounds out most of the highlights of the Nintendo announcements. Move over to Sony.
Sounds good.
Yes.
I have nothing to say about Sony.
Their intro was
it's
very
actually
long.
okay. I'm going to try and stay as positive as possible. It's going to be difficult.
That was a cheap shot, I realize.
No, it's one that I'm actually sad that you beat me to. Because I was about to fall asleep. And everybody else was pretending like it was like the end of the world, how crazy and insane it was. So yeah, it didn't hit me the same way that it seemed to hit everybody else.
Maybe it was themes to games I never played, so I wasn't as enthusiastic. Did you recognize any of the music from the opening?
Well, they I skipped the opening and just went straight to the actual start of the press conference, and I thought it was cool, like that they had like live music accompany each of the killers. That was a cool idea. That was a good idea. Where it was a little awkward was kind of like they'd also have music play like when the CEO and like the kind of the bigwigs would come out. So it's kind of like it felt
weird to me too.
I don't want to say douchey, but
he even mentions like, you know, if you could have somebody play on like a 20-piece orchestra play on stage, it probably doesn't hit me quite right too, because the guy reminds me of bosses that I haven't been particularly affectionate of in the past. So yeah, it reminds me of when I've seen people like that pour on the charm when I know what they're like in reality. So yeah, he doesn't hit me quite right because of that. But that's completely personal and not fair to Sony, and why I want to try and stay as positive as possible.
And since you don't actually have Andrew House, I forget his name.
Yeah, he's probably the best guy in the world, and again, he did a very effective speech about current events that happened that are quite sad, and it didn't feel cheap or anything like that. It was very well crafted.
Good.
Okay, so now that I'm done taking cheap shots at them, the song that they were playing that was called out almost immediately by a lot of the people that I saw watching this, and watched it effectively with two different groups of YouTubers. And
are you talking about the beginning?
Yeah, the beginning intro. It was apparently very reminiscent of God of War.
That's the impression I got.
And so people felt that right off the bat, but when they started seeing footage of the first game, it threw them off, because they were trying to figure out what sort of IP it was, because it was very Norse and whatnot.
Yeah.
But when they have the main character come out of the shadows for the first time, it very plainly shows that it is Kratos.
Oh, look, it's Kratos. This is new God of War.
And so, everything clicked together at that point for most everybody. And it was a really impressive demo.
Yeah.
You could tell that it was an actual play setting, or a
playable setting.
Well, not setting. I chose those words. That word wrongly, but you could tell that it was actual gameplay.
Gotcha.
Just because you could see all the different little HUD things going off, like found this area. There's some sort of like psychology meter or something like that that shows rage, like
XP for knowledge gathered of hunting and this,
all sorts of little clues like that. Now they might have just been a really elaborate scheme to make it look like it was gameplay footage, but they sure sold it. it had a completely different point of view than I'm used to also, that allows them to really play up the quality of the character design and make you feel like you're more a part of the setting also. It's the same over-the-shoulder type of view that you see in a lot of games, but by bringing it a lot closer, somehow it makes it feel a lot more personal.
So like the Dead Space position?
Way closer than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Kratos takes up maybe a quarter of the screen, maybe a little bit less on the one side. But since he fights with the weapon in the hand that hangs out to the other side, it makes the combat look very nice and flowy. That's my $10 word right there, flowy. Yeah. My only criticism that I sort of have it is that while from what I understand of the game, since I'm not a big player of them or fan, the common criticism is that Kratos is not the kindest person in the world.
He's not very sympathetic.
He strays very heavily into douche territory. So I'd understood that from other people talking about him, and he strays there quite a few times in this demo too.
At least he's true to character.
Yeah, the nice thing about it is that it's tempered by him apparently really genuinely caring about somebody on the screen, and I don't know if that's going to end up being something that sells the game in the long run or if it'll get tiresome. And that's that he apparently has his own son with him. So there's nothing that says like how that occurred or whatnot. There's some amount of question about how related this is to the other games, but it could very well be that the other games happened so far in the past that he's dealing with trying to become more normal. It proceeds with fights where he is trying to both protect his son and teach him the ropes of combat. He ends up chewing out the kid quite a bit. That's where the douchebag territory comes in. But that said, all of the fighting was amazing on the visual side. The weapons that you kind of write off as normal Viking weapons really come alive once you see magic like course through them, and he's taking out what looks like smaller sort of undead creatures of some sort, still way larger than his own child, but no match for him. And then eventually he goes against a full-on, really large troll that the combat there was really nice looking too. I'll be interested to see how much of it is kind of the classic God of War stuff, from what I understand, of QuickTime events.
Right.
Because it had a fair amount of like climbing onto the guy's shoulder and whatnot. But yeah, very effective presentation. Nice way to start off the entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with that kind of twist of like, wait, what is this?
Right.
Is this what it's like? Oh, okay. And that's what I think, like, that's where I would give, I mean, we'll get to Xbox, but that's kind of where I would give Sony the edge.
Yeah.
With these conferences. Like, Sony had the, like, surprise.
Yeah.
They pulled off the most surprises. They had the prettiest stuff. And they fed better than anybody off of the same thing that they did last year. Is sort of I really love this game. I can't wait to see the new version of it.
Yeah. And it kind of sucks that like a lot of the stuff that would have been a surprise for Microsoft was leaked.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd already mentioned, so that kind of sucked. That took out some of the bite. Like, we already know about that. We already know about that. But we'll get to that when we get to Xbox. But,
Right. The other side of it is, as cool as that was, release date doesn't really put it in the range of being relevant to this E3. So
Is it like holiday next year?
I believe no release date.
Ah,
yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, there was some stuff like Horizon. I think had a release date for next year.
Yeah, Horizon is fairly early next year.
Yeah. But yeah,
from what I remember, there's 2 games that had release dates. Horizon was one of them. I can't remember the other one offhand. But
I know one of them. Maybe I don't know if it's.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that's the one thing that is kind of interesting is that a lot of people were really, really psyched about this one. It had showed arguably fewer games than anybody else, but the visuals were so spectacular and it fed on people's emotions so well that people didn't care when anything was coming out or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, the other one, it may not be the one you're thinking of, but that did get a release date was, and it plays off the surprise thing, was Resident Evil 7.
Oh, yes, that's true.
That was like, wait, this is Resident Evil 7? Like, it is, it's first person.
What?
It does not, it's like, it starts out, you're like, okay, is this like maybe like, it starts out a horror game, going through, the character gets up with the flashlight, it's all, you're moving around. It's very...
It looks really good. It feels really creepy.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out, something felt off about it, and I couldn't put my finger on it for a long time. When they announced more details about it at the very end, it all clicked into place. And that's that... Okay. Well, first off, they're obviously trying to feed off of the excitement that people had for PT and the now lost game that was going to accompany it later down the line that was nixed by crud. I want to say Kotaku. Anyway, but they announced that it was going to be one of their VR titles. And from what it sounds like so far, it's the only actual like full-on game VR title that they've put through. They have another game that there's a big question mark about whether it's an actual game or not. But they led off their VR set with it. I forget the name of it, but it's like a space exploration type of game that starts you on a desert planet. And why I mentioned that one is that it felt weird seeing that because the background, like the horizon with all of the spacey stuff, looked really good. And I couldn't figure out why. It was obviously really low polygon counts on all of the rocks, but the textures were really nice. And that's why I mentioned that first, because it effectively was the exact same thing with the Resident Evil game. They did a really good job of crafting scenery that was genuinely creepy, but what I realized was bugging me about it, everything's really low polygon count. And the reason is that they don't have the horsepower for like really good VR yet.
Right.
They might completely nail the experience. I hope they do. But it's something that I know would bug me at least. But that said, it was the Resident Evil thing was easily one of the most exciting things on their presentation.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And just so it's like it's not Resident Evil 7 VR. Like you can play it with PlayStation VR, but it's
either or.
Okay.
And they address too of like, well, you made it first person because of the VR. Like, no, we wanted to make it first person originally, this is where we're going with it. Like we're
And the proof of that apparently is that they had a demo in the previous E3 that was simply called The Kitchen. And apparently it was literally part of the scenery that we saw. And nobody could figure out what the heck it was supposed to be. But now that it's a callback, it's obviously that they've been planning this for over a year.
Okay.
Yeah. It's worth checking out. I mean, it loses a little bit of the bite when you know what it is at the end, but it's like, it's just really genuinely surprising. As you're like, this is not, especially after Resident Evil 6 and previous where they got more and more actiony. It's like this is from what they show, it's the complete opposite. Like,
It's going to sound like a weird
Return
thing
to form,
to
sort of.
say is really awesome for a video game, but one of the best little typography tricks that I've ever seen in my entire life. Because at some point they realized that the Roman numerals for 7 are in the word evil. So they have it Resident Evil, and then slowly the 7 illuminates in the evil.
No, it's 7 first. Then Resident Evil comes in.
Right.
Because it was first like 7. Wait, what? And I'm thinking about wait, was there like an old game named 7 or something like that? And then it's like Resident Evil. Like, oh damn!
It's pretty cool.
Well played, Sony. Well played.
The other thing that with the reveal of the Resident Evil is that they hooked it back into Biohazard. They're actually naming this one Biohazard as the subtext. So it's going to be interesting to see
in Japan. Biohazard.
Right. Yeah,
Biohazard 7,
that's what I was
Biohazard.
wondering, if in Japan they'll swap it around the other way.
Yeah.
Biohazard Resident Evil 7. But it's never been Resident Evil.
Biohazard 7, Resident Evil. Yeah.
But I can see it being a particularly effective in Japan, since Resident Evil, to me, it fit with the first game really well.
Yeah.
But as a title, it didn't fit with the other games as well. But now that this is obviously a very creepy residence, now to have that trumped up in Japan, it fits quite nicely.
Yeah.
So, does it rekindle your love for the series like Code Veronica, or?
I mean, we'll see how more of it comes across. I'll be interested to see how they handle the jump to VR or not. If it means that the graphics are going to be kind of whittled down across the entire game, but still, like, as far as illumination on the scenes and whatnot, still very effective. Or if they're effectively going to have 2 different versions of the game that one thing either unlocks or another. Because to me, it was pretty obvious that we saw the VR version of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, they did say too, the PSVR $400.
Yeah, and the release date for it, which is very soon.
Yeah, and it's also the single most affordable VR unit to date. Like, the others might be quote-unquote higher fidelity, but this is the one that you can probably pick up and use without busting open the bank.
The thing that I'm still surprised that they haven't elaborated more on is that it apparently has some sort of middle box that it runs the cord from your PS4 unit to this box to VR.
Yeah.
I don't know how much processing or what that box does, or if it's simply just power or whatnot.
Nobody's really sure what that box does yet.
I'm surprised that they haven't played that up at least a little bit, because, I mean, if they would have done it right, it could have acted as an auxiliary GPU or something like that to kind of push things a little bit better.
Well, I think it's from what I hear, the PS4 can't do VR without
the box.
This additional thing. So to kind of, it's best to not play up the fact that our system can't do something. So that's probably why they don't mention yes, it comes with this additional thing that you need in order to make this work.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because
PS4 fits in this little cubby. Not anymore.
Because that's effectively what everybody believed Neo was being created for, is to bridge that gap and make PlayStation into a fully functional VR rig. But that said, they decided to completely pull Neo from the show, so there's no mention of it at all.
Yeah.
They actually came out the day before and announced that there wasn't going to be anything about Neo. Which actually, from one standpoint, I thought was really nice, is that it makes it nice and clear that all of the footage that we saw, none of it was Neo. That was a nice thing to me, at least.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good point. Cool. What else?
Well, I mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn. They showed that off playing.
Oh man, I am totally pitching a tent for that game.
I think right now that's like, to me, I wrote down, like, that's perhaps the best reason to own a PS4.
I'm going to be really tempted to get a Neo when it comes out, specifically for that. I don't know if I will. If there's one more killer game that I'll want around that same time, I might go in for it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. Well, it's kind of the same thing like you mentioned, or you ask about Nintendo. I'm in more or less the same boat for the next console for them, and paired up with the new Zelda, but they'd need at least one other thing that I'd want to spend my time on. Otherwise, it's not worth the price of entry, even though they haven't announced what that price is.
Yeah.
So maybe one of these other games will do it for me. But right now, the release schedule for the Sony's big games aren't really hitting me right. So
yeah. The one I wrote down that was like a second reason to own a PS4, but it's not coming anytime soon. If we can go with Kojima's track record, is Kojima's new game.
Yeah,
with Norman Reedus, Death Stranding. Yeah,
sometime within the next 10 years, this game will drop.
Did everybody see the preview for it? You did. Yeah. Did you see it, Caleb?
I didn't get to that point.
Oh, you have to see it. You have to see it. Because it's good.
Should I pause this and watch it, and then we can come back to it?
Let's do that.
All right.
So there you go. You just watched Death Stranding trailer. So yeah, it's very Kojima-esque Kojima.
Yes. It's about as Kojima as you can get. What's going on? Don't know. Is it cool? Yes. You want to play it? Probably.
Yeah.
What is going on? You still just wait.
I mean, you could definitely tell that he and Norman Reedus clicked with Silent Hills, and were like, okay, that project fell through.
That is nice.
I want you to come along with me. I got this idea. Maybe even pulled some things from the Silent Hills thing, because there was some hints of some kind of child thing possibly with Norman Reedus with that Silent Hills PT thing. So who knows? It's probably not a whole lot, because the whole possible sewage, suing kind of thing. Sewage
I like
of
that.
suing.
Yeah.
But yeah, clearly they enjoyed working together, or were willing to work together again. So that's cool.
Yeah, it looks like it'd be an impressive project. The age-old question of when will that ever release is who knows.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that if you expect it any sooner than 2019, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like either it'll be like the Metal Gears, where it's going to take a while, or for some reason there's that split chance. I don't know why. I'm thinking bam, this could come out not next year, but it could actually come out sooner than we think. Maybe he actually had way more.
Yeah.
And they thought, now that he's his own company and with Sony and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it is far on the horizon as you see the figures in the trailer.
I know I'm very much in the minority because every single person that I've come across in the interwebs has gone kind of nuts over this trailer. Does absolutely nothing for me whatsoever. It's just weird.
Well, here's the thing.
It is.
You never really played his games, right?
The first Solid I was actually a really big fan of.
But you never played
other than that.
Okay. I think there's like, if you're a fan of Kojima and you stuck with it, like there's a style that you see, and like it's okay. That's probably why it doesn't do a whole lot for you. Okay. Like maybe when they show off some more stuff, you know, whatever it actually ends up being, like then that might pique your interest. But yeah, I mean, I could see, like, if you're not really into Kojima stuff, like this is like, what the hell is this? Okay,
right.
Like
I was like, the first time I watched the movie Brazil, it made more sense to me than this did.
But don't get me wrong, Sense and the Metal Gear games, they're they don't really go hand in hand. There's a lot of stuff there. Like, I can't explain the Metal Gear games to you. I've played them. I haven't finished Phantom Pain, but yeah, there's and I'm sure this is going to follow suit of like very trippy, very deep, very so.
Yeah, it sort of like struck me as like, what would you say? Like he has a certain style. Like it's kind of like Guillermo del Toro. He has a particular style. If it doesn't hit you, none of his movies are getting particularly interesting. But if it's the style you enjoy, you're going to be kind of all over it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and to me, that's part of the reason why I end up having more disappointment for it, is because obviously him and Guillermo del Toro clicked very well, and I'm a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro. So I would have thought that something like this, I'd be full on board. But yeah, the thing that got me that was really cool was all of the like oily handprints. That was really cool to me.
That was cool.
But other than that, it was just weird.
It's definitely weird. I don't think any of us argue.
Yeah,
there.
It's like a music video at this point. What's it saying? Who knows?
Well, okay.
Yeah.
And that said, I am genuinely excited about him being back in the game, and they represented him one of the best ways that they possibly ever could have. They had. They had him come in walking on lit up cubes underneath him. He walked a little bit too fast, so they weren't lighting up quite fast enough. But still, the intent was there, and it was really neat. And the other thing is that they had this giant auditorium. I forget what they've used it for in other things, but just this amazingly giant, beautiful, opulent auditorium with a massive curtain behind it, and all through the entire show, they didn't peel back the curtain at all. They just used the screen that fell in front of the curtain to present everything. The only thing that they opened the curtain for was to have him walk in on a bridge of light.
Okay.
It was pretty effective.
Yeah.
And he simply says, "I'm back."
There you go.
That was really good. If I were more in sync with his stuff, I probably would have been tearing up at that point. But I definitely felt it, especially with all the stories that you hear about Konami and whatnot. A lot of people were saying, and I don't know if I believe this, but people seem pretty sold on it, is that when they were doing the walk-in for him, that people down by the orchestra, if not the orchestra themselves, were chanting F Konami. So there's some fuzz over who was doing that, but apparently it happened.
I wouldn't put it past audience members to do that.
Yeah.
Especially because he has got quite the following.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier that there was a Star Wars Battlefront, the X-Wing VR mission. So that was something that they, in lieu of a Neo or any sort of console thing or something this was the one conference where they started to push
really
PSVR
a lot. They had like 5 or 6 different items that they touched on as selling points. The Resident Evil was the final one that wrapped it all up, and it was a nice bookend for it. It was pretty good.
But yeah.
The one problem was they did a big long line of them, and they didn't say when the end of it was. So when they jumped to the next thing, there was a little span of time that people were like, wait, is this still in the VR portion of it?
Yeah.
And then once people realized what it was pretty clear that it wasn't. But we'll touch on that later. That said, the Star Wars thing looks really cool. Everybody said Space Combat is made for VR because it fits seamlessly with how VR functions. That said, it's still just one level in Battlefront.
Yeah, that was the thing that they mentioned, but they didn't like a lot of these things were like VR experiences,
right?
Like they're not full on games. Like they had one. It was like Batman Arkham VR, where you put on the cowl and you play, but it's not a full like Batman VR game. It's just an experience. So, but like they mentioned
the selling point for that was Mark Hamill's Joker.
Yeah, narrating.
Yeah,
was really good. But
really good.
These were things that and that's still like that's a good way to get someone to buy your product. Like here's like, okay, they're not full on games, but here's a whole bunch of neat experiences.
Right.
That like here's how you show your friends off. Like
I remember a lot of the really tiny indie games that they had when PS3 first came out. They weren't amazing, but they were such a leap forward in graphical power that it was a selling point for that system. So I can imagine this being sort of the same thing with VR all over again. It doesn't need to be a big thing as long as it grasps the person by whatever private parts deem necessary to be interested in it.
Yeah, and furthermore, it's like it is still a slightly better selling point than most of the other VR sets, which their main app is Tilt Brush, which is from every person I've heard that's used it, amazingly cool. But it's that and Work Simulator are kind of like the two big titles that people like know of with like Oculus and Vive. It's like, well, that's very interesting, but
that and they made a big deal that over 50 games, quote unquote, are going to be ready to play when the VR releases in October.
Yeah.
Which is very soon for that many things that we have heard nothing about.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they bring.
Yeah, I think to me the best thing about the PSVR is almost hopefully what it does, kind of like what the PlayStation 2 did for the DVD. It's cheap enough that it can get into a bunch of homes so that like you can experience VR, and so like that can build VR and allow it to grow.
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah, it's like, hey, here's a way for a bunch of people to experience VR. It may not be as incredible as the Rift or something like that, but it's a way to get a bunch of units in, and that benefits everyone. Even if like I don't
especially
plan on buying one, but
especially since PS4 is already the dominant console and it's owned by a lot of people. Having something relatively inexpensive that you can just tack onto it is a huge thing for the entire VR industry. And I can imagine it being big for them too.
It's become interesting, like hearing some of the tech pundits that I follow, like talk about VR in toto, and the the several of them are saying like the one to buy because it's the one that you can probably afford is the PlayStation VR. Like start there. Like unless you want to like dedicate a lot, like if you're a super enthusiast about VR, then yeah, maybe one of the other ones. But like if you're just kind of VR curious,
yeah,
pick up the PlayStation. The PlayStation VR is probably going to be the one to start with.
Yeah, and that's a definite. If you have a PlayStation 4, there are a number of people who don't, including the people in this room.
Yeah,
everyone in this room. Yeah,
but yeah, I can totally see that being the case, especially when you compare it to the price of. Even if you had the like a Vive or whatnot, you'd have to have an accompanying rig that can run it.
Yeah,
and
those are not cheap.
Yeah, that's minimum like $800, best I understand.
Yeah, that's what I've heard is about average for what you would need to run a decent Vive experience.
But that said, there are a lot of PC people out there who already have that rig.
Yeah.
So,
or maybe are like $200 away from it by upgrading their graphics card or something like that.
Maybe. So yeah, to me, VR is going to end up perpetuating by whatever the path of least resistance is, and PlayStation definitely has the edge on that.
Yeah. So, speaking of the path of least resistance, it was interesting how it kind of fit with how they introduced all the the games. It was kind of just like trailer. Like there was a few times they had someone come out
openly lauded about their thing is that they definitely catered to people with low attention span because they just kept punching.
Yeah, but I'm kind of curious if, sort of going along with that, if you look back on previous like E3s, whenever Call of Duty came out, they always had somebody come out, from whichever company that's come out, and like, hey, this is the next one, blah 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 blah. Flowing with this, like just trailer after trailer, like they have the new Call of Duty, and it's just like unless it's Call of Duty, there's no real like idea that it's Call of Duty until you get slowly in more. And that's
what I was referencing too, as far as the jump off of them doing VR, is that they didn't have any indicator that they had left the VR portion of the program. They jump straight into something that is very sci-fi, looks pretty neat, but is a gigantic cutscene, best that you can tell at the moment. And it takes maybe 3 minutes for you to realize that it's Call of Duty. And I think universally people have been pleasantly surprised that it was Call of Duty when it got to that point. I haven't heard anybody say anything bad about it.
Yeah.
But it was a weird switch.
I'm kind of curious if one of the reasons why they stuck Call of Duty in like that with the rest of them was if it had anything to do with the backlash from like YouTube and just a lot of the kind of negative press
it's hard to say.
It's gotten. If they're like, well, if we don't come out and say here's the next Call of Duty, and we kind of just,
I am surprised that they didn't at least push their normal trump card, or at least at this point with Call of Duty, is that we're the first draw on all the DLC. I'm surprised they didn't try and push that into it at all.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They just showed it and backed slowly away.
Yeah. I mean, they will get it, but
I don't think they realized how effective that clip was going to be. I think they were probably afraid that, well, nobody seems to like this, so we'll give it some distance. But yeah, that said, I'm reasonably excited about the next Call of Duty now. It is completely different.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, there's space combat.
Yeah, you're flying around in your jet.
Right.
Call of Duty Above and Beyond?
Kinda, yeah.
Huh.
I had not connected. You're talking about the old sci-fi series?
Space Above and Beyond, yeah.
Yeah, it's very much that, actually. Except instead of aliens, it's apparently some evil military corporation or something like that.
Yeah. Aren't they all?
Of course. Evil military space corporation. I mean, those are always the most evil of them. Of
course.
The space corporations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, zero G combat and movement looked really cool. Looked smooth, slick, kind of fun.
Homing grenade things.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we've seen that in Advanced Warfare, but seeing it in zero G, like, oddly, I was kind of curious why he bothered with it, because he had already effectively spaced those two people, but having them explode was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the classic, our classic, was the RPG really necessary?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
That's right.
But yeah, they show a coordinated attack with your group of teammates. I don't know if that meant that co-op gameplay, or if it just was supposed to show how much cooler the AI is in this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was very effective. It looked cool.
Nice.
Yeah, then they had it early on, and then they closed out with it. Days Gone.
Yeah, and if you missed one or the other, you would have a completely different idea of the game.
Yeah,
because the first one was a.
I was like thinking, like, whoa, is this like Last of Us 2? Like it was.
That's what a lot of people thought, because the setting, the way everything looked, everybody seemed to think that. It's some sort of diseased post-apocalyptic setting, from what you can tell of it, where humanity managed to eke out some sort of existence by kind of retreating back to the woods, and the group that they're focusing on is a group of bikers. And so it draws from the popularity of the Sons of Anarchy series, and seems to do that fairly effectively in that first sequence, because honestly, it felt like it was directly cut from a lot of the monologues off of the father in that series.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was very, like, I remember back in the day, everything was like better. We were closer. Love was all grand and whatnot, and then everything fell apart, type of thing. But I'm still fighting, and it was very effective. But it left it feeling like, okay, so is it just you trying to survive in the woods? I don't know what's happening here.
Because it was like you were. He ends up like now I'm a mercenary bounty hunter kind of thing, and it's like, oh, okay, so you kind of go off and do jobs and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And then,
so having a motorcycle seems to be a fairly big part of it, and it is a cool thing that we haven't seen played up in much of anything. I mean, you've had plenty of games that you could get a motorcycle, but to specialize in that, it seems like it could get into some areas where it would be pretty neat. It's an off-road style bike that seems to be heavily customized, because this guy seems to have a fair amount of mechanical knowledge.
Yeah.
But compare that to what we saw wrap up the show. It's like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah, where did these, I don't want to say zombies, but like, weird.
Because it starts out very much as a continuation, or at least in the same vein of the previous thing. It's like him talking to himself, like something along the lines of, well, I'm looking for my friend. I hope he's around here. I hope I can track him down, or something like that. So he's looking for this guy. First thing he comes across is a dead body, and is like, gets close enough to it, and it's like, okay, well, that's not him, but that's not good either.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's on a mission to like capture some guy, and then you get like a glimpse of something a little weird, and then when he goes around like a corner, one of those creatures is like eating a body of the thing. Like, what the hell?
It looks like Golem is eating a human being.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? This came out of nowhere. Like, because like Jason mentioned, like the first trailer really doesn't hint at anything along those lines as far as like, you know, creatures of some kind.
So, here's where it lost me, though, is, I'll rewind just a second, is that before he sees the creature, he plays up the mechanical skills by raiding like a bus that's parked off to the side. He pops the engine compartment, pulls out an oil filter, and sort of looks at it like, okay, this could be useful, and figures that he can screw it into his pistol to make a makeshift silencer. So you're thinking, like, well, why does he need a silencer? And then you see this thing, it's like, okay, that's probably why he needs a silencer. And then promptly, the second that he sees that thing and it scampers off, he starts yelling to the other guy, like, trying to find him by, like, yelling at him. And it's like, wait, what was the point of the silencer then?
Yeah. They do have a little. It is kind of when he's like running off, like kind of like chasing after that guy. Like he climbs up the building and is like, "Why don't you come back?" Goes and you see like as he gets closer to the edge of the building, the floor like on the ground is like tons of these things.
It's a really good moment.
Yeah, they're like, "Whoa, okay."
So
and they're very much like World War Z, where they'd all pile on each other and run and stuff like that. So
that's
there was a lot of.
That's the big new thing in this, is that they figured out how to have dynamic, diverse, liquid movement of human-like creatures. And it's just like World War Z, because you see them like busting down walls just by the sheer weight of them. And effectively, it's you just trying to survive a scenario where this many things exist and are intent on your destruction.
Yeah. But yeah, they had that like gameplay like close out the night. So there was they came out like there was speculation of like, did something get cut and that got replaced? But then they came out and said, no, this is how we had it planned. But I don't know.
Who knows?
The
same speculation that popped up earlier with I forget who I mentioned it on, was that maybe whatever they were initially planning wasn't the best for whatever events had just occurred.
I think we're talking about Ubisoft at that point.
Right. The other side of it is that they were obviously trumped by Microsoft with their new hardware, and they could have planned on spending the last chunk of their presentation talking about their new hardware, but now it's effectively pointless, because now there's some debate whether they're just going to scrap it and go back to the drawing board or not. Nobody knows how far in the process they are, if they're stuck behind, or if they're going to just bite the bullet and push things until Microsoft releases their stuff so that they can trump Microsoft after that.
Yeah.
It's going to cost them, but it might be worth it.
Yeah, the other last thing was that Detroit Become Human, that Android one where you could make a bunch of different choices and how you...
It's very pretty. The themes are really cool.
Yeah.
But it's a game structure from a game company that's very polarizing. Like,
is the Quantronic Dream?
I forget the name of them, but I believe Heavy Rain was one of the games.
Right, okay, yeah.
So a lot of people dislike those games, is what it comes down to. And people are still torn whether they like that sort of experience or not. If that's what you're expecting, I can imagine it being plenty cool, but it sounds like each time people are expecting more than they got out of the previous game. So it'd be interesting to see how it works out. And the other thing is that it has no time frame for release at all.
A lot of the stuff like you mentioned.
So yeah,
Except Last Guardian, they gave a release date for that this year.
That is
so
true.
People were happy about that.
But Last Guardian is releasing right in the middle of everything else.
Yeah.
And they're going to put it up against Call of Duty effectively. It's going to be off by a month, but
yeah, I mean, I think they feel that the audience for Last Guardian is.
It's also going up against both of the Ubisoft titles releasing at the same time, Titanfall 2 and I forget what the Battlefield 1. So yeah, there's probably room for it, but if either Titanfall or Battlefield pulls off a coup and ends up being like the new Overwatch, it might drown. Who knows?
Yeah. It's hard to say. That's.
My suspicion is it'll probably garner at least a cult following, not unlike a Shadow of the Colossus. Where it's like it's a game that people are like, wow, that game was really good. It didn't sell very well. It's still a really good game, kind of scenario. That's my best guess at a worst case scenario for it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I'll do just fine.
Yeah.
Whether it artfully drowns or horrifically drowns, drowning is drowning.
I mean, it has its advantage, like you said. Like there's way more PS4s out there than Xboxes,
exactly.
So the fact that it's a PS4 exclusive, it gives it a slightly better shot. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things they can just kind of bank on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely got the buzz going for it. I think people are incredibly psyched that it finally has an actual solid release date.
Yeah.
The timing just feels off to me, that's all.
Yeah.
It seems like they could have picked a safer time to make more money off of it at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah, if it was like ready enough, I'm kind of surprised they didn't like decide August or something like that.
Well, what I've heard as from actually one of the kind of funny guys who they're firmly in the place of knowledge for all things PlayStation because it's kind of their specialty and what they love. PlayStation itself doesn't have anything else in that block of time. And so they don't have anything else for another 6 months. So they needed something in that slot for
that makes
holiday.
sense.
And that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, because a lot of their exclusives, their first party stuff is next year. Mm-hmm. So they're relying heavily on third party stuff, which being the top selling console is
they're going to make their money one way or the other. But they still need to make their presence known, and that's how they're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
Sounds not like a bad idea.
Caleb sounds so thrilled.
Yeah. I remember seeing the demo for it and just like, this is very pretty, but I can't bring myself to really care about this game.
Yeah, it seems to build or rely pretty heavily on your instant attachment to the cuteness of this creature.
Yeah.
And that works a fair amount. Mm-hmm. The newest thing for it, I'd almost recommend not watching it because it might have some of the biggest spoilers in the game. I don't know. To me, I'm surprised they added anything more to it at all because who knows how big of an experience it's going to be. I can't imagine them throwing more stuff away than they need to when there's already interest in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The weirdness of filming gaming.
Speaking of interest,
yes.
Let's jump to Xbox.
Yes.
Okay.
The one
I
we all
hated
watched.
everything about.
The one we all watched. And so I'll mention sort of again why kind of I give sort of the slight edge to Sony as far as like surprises goes is because so many of the surprises for Xbox were leaked.
Pre-released.
If you for most people that watch E3 that are pretty big into video games, like you follow video game news and that sort of stuff. So you heard about the Xbox S, you heard rumblings of this Scorpio thing.
Yeah,
so
a long time ago too.
Yeah, so the fact that they made an official announcement about these things is awesome, but because you And I said,
that's
you
the other
knew
debate
about
too.
it.
Would they have even talked about it if it weren't for that? I think it's smart that they did either way.
Oh yeah,
but you don't know.
But yeah, it took. It's interesting compared to where Sony's. A lot of the games they showed off were either like early next year or no release date at all.
Right.
Microsoft's were like
everything is now.
Yeah, everything's coming out this year. There were a few things that were next year, but a lot of them were like, okay, you're getting them this year.
That said, I think we've seen the closest thing to Phil Spencer losing his cool on Twitter in the last day.
Oh,
is he ended up pointing out, and as classy as he could, but still, I'm surprised he did it because it's out of character. Because he's up until this point, he's been very like, gaming is great. I own a PlayStation. I'm happy to see whatever comes out, and I just want the industry to succeed. This is the first time he's been fairly plainly on Xbox's side. In my view, is that he pointed out that almost none of the PlayStation stuff had a release date. All of the Xbox stuff had a release date within 18 months, and that they technically had more exclusives than PlayStation showed. And he left it at that. But still, it's the most as dry as it was. It's the most pointed remark I think I've ever seen from him. So I think the fallout from this show and a lot of people declaring Sony as the winner of E3 2016, I think that got under his skin because his company's presentation. Like a lot of people who are big fans of PlayStation, a lot of people mentioned when they saw the Xbox presentation, they knocked it out of the park. That was really good. Yeah. It's one of the best presentations the industry has ever seen. And it didn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I mean, it's hard because definitely an Xbox fan, but
right.
Compared the two, I think the Microsoft press conference was a better one.
Same here.
But where I mentioned with Sony, they had sort of better like surprise kind of moments. But I think Microsoft's just, if you look at all around, bam, it starts out with a brand new Xbox One S Slim, 4K, all these things, and ends with this future Xbox One that's coming out. And it's like, when have you watched a conference where they've like talked about like the two consoles and then shown? It's just.
And the big thing to me too is they point out that the new Slim is going to swap over to Bluetooth support.
Yeah, with the controller.
For the controller and probably at some point the other peripherals as well, which will be pretty slick. And I know I'm probably going to end up getting the controller, if nothing else, just because for me it's perfect. Because I end up swapping the controllers between use on my Surface and on the Xbox. And as it stands right now, I have to hook up a cable to it or buy an extra dongle. The Surface only has one USB port. It's a very nice USB port, but I'd rather not plug something into it if I don't have to, because the simplicity of the thing is what's nice about it. So if I can just pull out a controller and have it work with it, period, I'd prefer that. And they've enabled that.
And I think what I've heard, like, a lot of it, you look at it was like Xbox One and Windows 10 exclusive, and it was, and I would saw a lot of comments. A lot of people was like, "Well, this definitely shows that like it's a good time to be a PC gamer or something like that." Like there was a lot of negative thing of like, why would you're not convincing me, for to get an Xbox, like that sort of thing, and it's like,
but that's not the point.
For me, on the other hand, it's like, well, okay, stop and think for a moment. It's like, okay, so you got a Surface or Windows 10 PC, in your office, something like that, right? Or somewhere in another room. Mm-hmm. In your living room, you got your TV, so you got your Xbox One hooked up in. You buy the Xbox One copy. You get a free Windows 10. It has,
which is a completely solid initiative from this point forward.
Yeah, with the Xbox Play Anywhere. Yeah. And so now, if you're in your living room, you want to play, bam. If you're someone wants to use the TV or something like that, or you want to stop, okay, I'll just go in my office, pick up right where I left off. It's people don't want to see the convenience suddenly that's at it. It's not there's no reason now to buy. It's the Xbox it does other it has Netflix, it has all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's in your living room usually, so it's
I don't. Okay, I'll put it this way: as amazing as a lot of the stuff that cropped up in this convention or outside surrounding this convention was, it still showcased how crazy the fanboy sentiment is in this little space of time, both from the PlayStation and from the PC perspective. Because it's so weird. All of the people that are super PC people, they felt free to completely go crazy on Xbox, best I could tell. A lot of them. Mm-hmm. There were some notable exceptions that I was fairly happy about. Total Biscuit came out very heavy in favor of Xbox in their presentation, and he's super heavy PC, mostly from the standpoint of PC effectively is the most pro-consumer platform out there because it gives the most options. Xbox just changed that. Is that the entire Xbox ecosystem creates the most options.
Yeah.
And his argument was, if people can't see that, they aren't really looking at it quite right in his opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you're kind of going for.
Yeah.
So, it was nice to hear somebody with some actual pull sit back, analyze things for a minute, and give a presentation of his thoughts on the conference after everything was done without the fanboy coming out. I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
Another interesting aspect of the changeover in the S and then probably the next rev of the Xbox One that isn't Scorpio that uses Bluetooth is that the Bluetooth controllers will also be compatible with cell phones. So cell phone gaming will get a controller.
There's some argument about that at this point. It's not 100% assured, but it should be eventually that it will work out that way.
Yeah.
But on launch, it may not work that way.
Launch is always rocky for almost any new peripheral.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it opens up the possibility for that. So
the other thing that, in case people were wondering, and some people were concerned, the new controllers aren't just Bluetooth. They're actually a dual antenna controller. So they function off of the normal 802 system and Bluetooth,
right?
Which is really nice considering they're not more expensive.
Yeah.
The other, sorry, one more thing. Go ahead.
No, go.
The other spin on the Bluetooth thing is that by adding Bluetooth into the console, you now can use standard PC peripherals with the console, meaning
it's the controller has the Bluetooth.
Well, by virtue of the controller having the Bluetooth, the new Xbox is going to function off of Bluetooth going to the controller, and they've used that as a selling point that it will extend the range of the controller out to 40 meters. I don't know who plays a game at 40 meters.
Okay, so that's what they're referring to with the increased range.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Just to finish, the way there's a push to make the Windows 10 one Windows on all places, which means that your Xbox will be running the same basic code as your desktop, which means that you could if you hook up a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard to your Xbox, you now have a computer in your living room.
Yeah. Well, the keyboard and mouse support is coming.
Yeah. They've been talking about that for a long time, but I'm sure the Bluetooth will help a lot.
Yeah. They've said it's now months away instead of like years away. Because I was reading a thing.
I'd like to believe them, but that's the one thing from Xbox that I'm like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, but I don't know if it was Phil Spencer, but they said like right now in the dev kits, the keyboard works.
Okay.
But the mouse isn't there yet. So.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be especially nice if they can have all of the tweak settings built into the UI also, so that you can mess with the sensitivity of the mouse just through the normal AI like they have with the Elite Controllers little app. It puts the Elite controller in a weird place too, because it's not going to be Bluetooth, even though it's considered like the top of the line controller. And so it's opened up the question about whether they're going to have an Elite 2.0 and what that's going to mean. So,
yeah, my suspicion is that they'll probably make once they run out of production of the 1.0 Elite. They're like, yeah, we now have the 2.0 Elite, or maybe they'll stick a Bluetooth chip into one of the peripherals so that you can just plug that into your Elite.
Which the 1.0 Elite is still, I like that we're already calling it the 1.0 Elite. It's still not necessarily a guarantee that you're able to get it at any given time, which is still amazing to me, considering the price of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of the controllers,
right?
Like, I know it.
I hope I know.
I think it was. I think Kind of Funny mentioned it, but it made me think too of like, this is the first time that like the company itself is allowing you to like customize your controllers, like instead of a third party, like slap on these things or
screw it up
there. Yeah, like here's the hey, you can design and build your controller through us, and it's like it makes you think like, yeah, that is weird that like no one else has,
especially Sony, since they make things.
Yeah,
that is so weird to me. It took Microsoft getting into the making market to do this when Sony literally makes everything that you can think of. Yeah, it is odd,
but it's cool too because like at first when they sort of mentioned it, like it looked like, oh, okay, I could, make my controller blue or red, or, that's how they kind of started off. But then they like showing all the different, you can change this, you can this button, this, you can make these. It's like,
I have not stopped playing with that since the site went online. And I have made so many different incarnations.
You can put the name on it too.
Yeah. You can have laser etching on it for an additional $10. It sounds like it's expensive to begin with because it is, I believe, $80 to have it custom made.
Yeah.
But considering that the normal kits for all the same stuff end up working out, and I believe $20 or $30 less than that, it's not that much considering the amount of customizability that you're going to get.
Plus, you'll get the latest version of the controller as well.
Yeah.
So it puts me in a weird place because I already have 3 different incarnations of controllers with orange trim. I want all of those. But past that, I've been really happy with gray on gray with practically any other color as the trim color. I like all of them. I like the sort of powder blue color. I think they're calling like retro pink. It's like very much pink flamingo. I like that a lot, surprisingly. And then they have like a hot pink color. They look so awesome with gray. It's totally like straight out of the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The only color combination I haven't been incredibly enthusiastic is any of the darker colors. All of the bright colors just pop so well against any of the more muted backgrounds of a controller, and not to mention that you can swap things around and make it a completely rainbow colored controller if you want to, make it the brightest, most garish thing you ever wanted.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had way too much fun with that.
Yeah.
I think I've saved at least 4 different ones and made, I think, 7 of them before I realized, not 7 before, but I've made a total of 7 of them, but I only realized for the last 3 or 4 that I could save them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, then kind of branching out that, like, the S, I mean, like, it's actually, like, seeing it, it's like, it's a lot smaller than...
40% smaller is a lot volumetrically.
Yeah, it's really crazy. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is apparently there's been precedents for this in the past that I had no idea. Microsoft goes straight to the kind of funny guys for all of the actual hardware presentations for stuff. So I don't know if it's because they know it's kind of walking into the lion's den or not, but they've apparently only allowed hands-on stuff with their new stuff that is just released with them. And so they were the only ones at the conference to get their hands on one of the S's.
Video, yeah.
And
if it's the same one here.
Yeah, and they were impressed. And the thing that they pointed out that I'm surprised they didn't point out in the presentation that should have just kind of made sense is that now it's small enough to fit into a laptop bag.
Yeah.
So you can take it places. And it's supposedly light enough that it's not even that big of a deal to pack with other stuff anyway.
Because now the power bricks integrated inside.
Oh,
have you?
I didn't realize that was one of the things that was on there. I saw the volumetric scale and the new new chipsets and stuff. I didn't realize that the power brick had been included. Into the.
It's
device.
still not tiny by any stretch, but it is roughly the size, looking down on it, of a laptop. So it's very easy to pack in whatever you probably already have.
I will say this, though. Kinect is dead.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I am very sad by this, but at the same time...
like, because it doesn't come with an adapter for the Kinect. You can get a free one. It's a USB adapter that you can plug in, but it doesn't. The S doesn't come with its own plug for it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So have they mentioned how you get the free one? Because
there's like a website page. You sign up and you if you give them the serial number or something on the connector. It's something. There's some.
That's
way.
good that they're doing that because they already have a price for the connector if you don't get it free, and it adds another $50 to the console, which is normal for any sort of weird connector for a video game system, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah.
But it's still painful.
Yeah.
So, definitely take advantage of the freebie while you can.
Yeah. It's just,
a big chunk of change that you'll save.
Yeah. It's just, it's sad that, because there was like no mention of it at the press conference. The only thing they mentioned was Cortana, but
which I've had very mixed results with personally.
Yeah, it's being in the preview thing. It needs to be faster. Like she's too slow.
To me, the one thing it did is it finally ramped up speed. But it has to learn all over again because Kinect had its own learning process where it learned your voice and how to deal with surrounding sound and whatnot.
Yeah,
it has to start from scratch, and that does make me happy.
And it's not like instant. It's like if you're not using like just to warm up for a second and say, because there's been stuff where I'll say like where if I was saying before Xbox, blah blah boom, it would just do it. This it's not super long, but it's noticeable.
Well, it's all internet based, and so the thing that draws it out farther is if you have any downloads going, any use of your broadband at all is going to sap its power.
Yeah, because they mention on it's like you can use your headset.
Right.
But there was something with like using it with Kinect, you can do additional things, but
I haven't found those things yet. All I found is things that it no longer does.
Yeah, I can't remember what they should have. I mean, maybe just because it's in the preview program only right now, but they should have put out a video showing off like, here's some commands that you can do. Because I remember seeing something or reading something where it's, it said like you can use Cortana with your headset, but if you use it with Kinect, you can do these additional things. But
the thing that I've already ran into that really threw me off is like, okay, how do I turn on my Xbox? It was like Xbox on, and that didn't work. I was like, well, I guess.
Yeah, you don't say Xbox anymore.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
So, and then it was like, okay, I remember now I have to talk to Cortana. So it was like, hey, Cortana and Xbox on. And apparently I didn't say Xbox loud enough. And so his second try, or third try, it finally came on. But the neat thing about it is that you can tell Cortana's on all the time now because the Kinect like lights up. It's like, huh? You're trying to talk to me? Which feels like oddly satisfying because it didn't necessarily do that before. So Cortana is oddly extra responsive when the system is off compared to when it's on, at least by what I've come across so far.
Which is still in the preview stages, so it's not final release yet.
Yeah,
so.
I think overall, I think she's cool. It just it needs work. She needs to respond faster, and it just needs.
Yeah, not unlike Siri being cool, but not quite there yet.
Have you? I've asked her stuff.
Cortana is already on the newest Surface, and it works really nice on that. So it's part of the reason why it threw me off. It's like, I think I know how to use this. I apparently don't. I need to learn the new things for Xbox. But yeah.
And have you asked her stuff? I've asked her like silly things like, what's your favorite color? Do you have a boyfriend?
No,
like, I've asked her,
I haven't. I've heard some of the responses to things like that, and I like that they've built in more tone and quality of voice with her. Yeah. That you can tell that she's joking back at you.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's something that you don't really get with Siri other than with the actual responses. So it's an extra little twist that I think is quite nice.
Quick branch off of the Cortana thing before we jump on to the next one is that, because that links back to the Windows 10 on the Surface, and quick run back to the
you hit yourself in the nose.
No, the Play Anywhere. It's also simultaneous play. Like the Windows 10 people can play with the Xbox Live players.
The cross-play.
Cross-play is now also a standard feature for those games that implement it. It's available, I should say.
That's another thing too, because kind of going back to what I was saying too. It's like, all right, so you're a family or something like that. The dad going to buy their son a $1,000 computer too? You could just buy an Xbox One. The dad can play on the PC and the kid can play on Xbox One or something. And then you bought the game once and you both can play together. You can both. It's like it's so strange. It's
how is it a loss to get something for free if you want it?
Yeah.
And yet people still figure out how to complain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the other thing that was brought up by Total Biscuit specifically.
Or daughter, I should say. I shouldn't just say
anybody, anyone.
Yeah.
Whatever they choose to define themselves as.
Exactly.
Or not. Anyway. It was brought up that now PC players have access to games that they wouldn't have had access to at all in the first place.
Yeah.
And that should be considered a win no matter what. He's very open that right now the Windows 10 ecosystem is fairly dry, and I forget what's the name of the program, WP or
Universal Windows platform.
okay, I got it right. UWP. I remembered something. That's an acronym. Yeah,
Go you.
I'm feeling powerful. The UWP right now is scary territory for a lot of developers, and so it's also kind of a ghost land because of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly it ends up adopted. But that said, again, PC players didn't have access to a lot of these games before. And how can you be angry that you now have access to something that you didn't have access to before?
Because people are weird. And the internet, if nothing else, loves to find something to complain about.
Right,
things.
but it's not the way I like it.
Yeah.
The guy say though, like, okay, so opening Gears of War 4, it was I think it was like number 2 or number something high on my 10 list, and like it's still I love that win stuff. Like I just love where they're going.
It's pretty
with this one. Yeah,
it's pretty.
It's
the other thing that they pointed out is that the new S is going to have something that wasn't even on my radar until I managed to get a screen that can support it. Is I believe it's HDP support or HDR support.
High dynamic range.
I almost got it.
High dynamic range.
Freaking UWP through. It would have been better if I would have screwed that up. Damn, my
UPN.
Songs instead.
Yeah.
That in that same kind of funny interview that it sounds like you saw, the Greenberg, the Xbox representative, pointed out that especially, or at least one of the better examples of how well that works was actually specifically with Gears of War, because you have dark situations where you have points of light, and the main thing that it specializes in is actually making sure that colors still pop in situations where the light isn't necessarily the best. And so for that game, especially since it takes place at night, you have like the moon and whatnot, it apparently ends up making it look twice as good.
Yeah.
And everything that I've seen so far already makes it look really good. So having that extra layer is attractive to me. Yeah,
they were saying that it's one of the first games that's taking advantage of that. And,
the HDR video is one of the things.
You mean HDP?
Yes, is one of the things that is one of the specs that a lot of people that are into filmography and movies and stuff like that, they're looking forward to using in the 4K spec, because that's like extra resolution is cool, but what's really got people excited, some of these people that are more into the image quality excited, is how much more color they can put into any one scene, how much more they can actually push and pull the visuals.
I was reading too that something that was mentioned is not all 4K TVs have HDR. So that's something you want to look for. Yeah. Like, so it's not like if you buy a 4K TV, it's like, oh, I automatically have this. Like, no.
For me, I was looking at it on the box. It's like, okay, this is probably just something that LG dreamed up to make it sound like it's something cooler. And then I end up finding like more and more things that are using it, and it's like, oh, I should be excited about this. I'm glad I got it.
Speaking of that, so I'm like so torn with the S. Yeah. Like,
same here.
I want one, but I'm not sure. Like I don't have a 4K TV right now,
right?
But yeah, I'm like, but I want one. Because then, like, even if I do trade it in for the Scorpio, I'd probably get more if I trade in the S towards the Scorpio than my original Xbox One.
That's true.
You know, but yeah, it's
difficult. I mean, the nice thing is they could have made it more expensive, and they didn't. They do have a 2 terabyte option that would make it more expensive. and apparently that's already sold out on pre-order. At least according to things I've read about the Amazon site. So maybe other places.
I would if I got one, I'd probably still just get the 500 because I'd just use a external.
From what I understand, it's either a 1 or a 2.
No, there's a 500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. That's the $299 one.
Oh,
that's
okay.
how they get away with saying, because there's little asterisks. But starting at $299, that's the 500 one.
Yeah, classic marketing maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't realize there were that many of them. That's all.
yeah. When I looked on GameStop, I only saw a listing for like the 2 terabyte one, or maybe the one. But so maybe not a lot of places will carry the 500, but
probably not. It's probably going to be like the places that will be more a specialty order or Microsoft site itself. Like Amazon and the Microsoft store probably be the ones that will be most likely to carry that. Big box stores probably be like, yeah, we only want to order like 1 SKU of this and not 15, so we'll just put this one on the shelf. We know that one will sell.
But I'm torn. Oh my God.
Yeah. I completely understand. I kind of want it. I don't have a good reason to.
Although of all of us, you're the only one with the screen that might actually use it.
That's the main thing. It's like I kind of want to do that, but again, it's something that people have also called out as a thing that's nice about what Microsoft did is that they put all the information on the table that you don't have to wonder if something else is in the pipeline. Something else is in the pipeline. So if you want to wait for that thing, you have that option.
Yeah.
Instead of just like thinking, oh, well, this is a pie in the sky idea that people just leaked for no good reason because it's probably just BS.
Right.
So it was nice of Microsoft to at least say that something else is coming out that might be something worth waiting for. But yeah, that said, if you have a 4K TV, it sounds like that's the biggest selling point for getting one right now, is that having the 4K streaming ability, which if you have a screen with good enough upscaling, it probably doesn't matter as much, but it is definitely nicer. Like, I'm glad I have one that had the smart component to it because I can stream directly onto the TV and still get my 4K. But that said, I don't usually do it just because the upscaling is actually quite nice anyway.
Okay.
Especially considering that streaming has a certain amount of artifacting anyway.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, plus upscaling from 1080p to 4K, well, it sounds like a lot. It's not as high.
It's not crazy. It's turning 1 pixel into 4, which doing the math for that isn't terrible hard. But still wielding that much information just to push it in the first place, that's harder, and that's what makes the new one pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of processor they threw into that thing that allowed it. It's got to be fairly powerful, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems like the S is targeted towards the people that haven't, made that jump yet, or were like they bought a PS4. Here's a good reason to jump into the Xbox ecosystem.
That's specifically what makes it the smartest, is that they know that that's their main thing, is trying to get people who already have a PS4 to make the jump, because there's already more PS4s out there. So yeah, having that as a selling point when especially because Neo was supposed to be their solution for 4K streaming. Having that be part of the current generation of an Xbox is pretty impressive in comparison.
Yeah.
And it's been debated that might be the biggest thing that scared Sony off from presenting anything about the Neo. It's like, well, our big trump card is that it does the same thing that the current generation Xbox does.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they pushed the VR a little bit further, because that's the thing that Xbox can't do now. Well, even though that won't be coming out until the end of the year anyway. So, but still, it's the one play they definitely knew they had to make against Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It was neat. The
clever girl.
Yeah. it was neat. The Scorpio video wasn't just like Xbox people like talking. It was like neat to see Todd Howard and I forget the guy's name from EA, but like saying like, yeah, when they came to us and were like telling us like what they kind of had in mind and asked us what we want, we're like, yeah, they're going for this. All right, this is excellent. And it was like, yes, finally, like
some recognition of advancement of technology.
Well, just that like it's nice to finally like, yes, Microsoft does like reach out and talks to people. Like it was nice to hear last year Todd Howard talk about when he mentioned mods coming to Fallout 4. He's like, yeah, we had this awesome relationship. We had this awesome relationship with Microsoft, you know, with the 360 working with Elder Scrolls, and you know they supported us and all these things, and we came to them and we're like, we really want to do this, and they said, you know, they were like, okay, let's do this. We don't know how we're going to do it, but let's do it.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to hear that from someone that's well respected, I think, in the industry. And so it was cool to see him, other guy, and the others, and them saying like, yeah, we realize we made a mistake. Like we didn't go for, you guys want power, you're getting power. Like this is
which is still funny because effectively that's where the first Xbox went wrong. So you can see why they were a little bit hesitant.
But at the same time, it's very much the TikTok cycle that we've seen thus far in the Xbox lifespan. Yeah. Xbox original, cool. A little bit undercooked. 360, excellent. A little bit overcooked in terms of heating. But
well played.
Once they evened that out, it became one of the most reliable systems that was available. And then
I still don't know if I'd call it most reliable, but yes,
I said one of. And then, now,
easiest to adopt, maybe.
Then the one they tried to push. They tried to find a middle ground between affordability and unique features, and sacrificed a bit of power to do so. And now they're like, okay, that was not quite the full step we should have wanted. Now,
see, here's the thing too: is that at that point, neither side had any idea. Neither side in PlayStation versus Xbox had any idea the power of the other console. So they were making these consoles blind to the other person, which must have been like crazy funny to NVIDIA, I believe it is, because they were making both GPUs.
Oh, ATI.
ATI? I could have sworn it was anyway. Whatever company it was, they both used the same one. And so I can only imagine what the internal documents for that company must have been like. It's like, man, it's a showdown and they don't even know it. So yeah, for all Xbox knew, they had aced out the power compared to the other to PlayStation and had other stuff to boot. And it just didn't work out that way. So
yeah, I could still. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
yes,
Tekken 7. that was interesting that showed up. Like, I was going to kind of see your thoughts on that. Was that like
I can only imagine that what probably happened is that PlayStation knew that they wanted to have a really pared down thing, so they had to prioritize exactly what those things were going to be that they were going to show, because they wanted that hitting power. Just bam, bam, bam. It's interesting to me that one of their kind of priority fighters didn't make the cut. The Tekken 7 wasn't important enough to them. And I'm sure that probably was interesting to the creators of Tekken 7 as well, which is why I'm not necessarily surprised that it popped up over on the other side. Along with a free copy of Tekken Tag for everyone, or Tekken Tag 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you haven't heard about this, go and get your free copy of Tekken Tag 2.
Yeah, because I think it's this week.
For this week
during
on
E3.
on Xbox One. So yeah,
do
that.
Yeah, it was
because I want more people to play with.
It's on my short list of things to do tomorrow.
It was interesting.
Do it now.
It was both Tekken 7 and Final Fantasy 15, like both on the stage there. It's like I sort of got the the kind of thing of like. Obviously Xbox has never really sold all that well in Japan.
Right.
So I don't think it was like entirely like, hey, Japan, buy an Xbox.
Yeah.
I think it was more kind of like, no, like Japanese games, there are things that are more associated with Sony or that stuff. It's like, no, we get those too.
Right.
Like it's...
And that's the thing that I've been really has blown me out of the water specifically with Tekken 7 is that, and I've mentioned this with conversations with you at least, Joe, is that they have never said that they're not coming to Xbox, not once. They've mentioned that they have a special relationship with Sony and that they're planning on having a certain amount of exclusive content with Sony. And I'm finding this out directly from Harada, the creator of Tekken, because he's one of the most active Twitter accounts out there, and he's nice enough to actually post things in English a fair amount.
What a swell guy.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. So that said, I had no idea where a lot of outlets were getting the idea that Tekken 7 was going to be exclusive to PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
But a lot of people were saying it. So yeah, having it come out first off like a week in advance that it's going to be on Xbox, and then having them show up on their stuff with that free giveaway. Yeah, that was pretty cool to me.
As soon as when I saw the release date, that I was like, that Jason's number 1 on his top 10 list is no longer going to be on that list. Yeah, because it got pushed to next year.
True.
It was funny for me because I was watching the trailer. Like, oh, it's Tekken X Street Fighter, the game that never made it to the Xbox.
I kind of thought
it's
that
Tekken
first
7.
Too.
Yeah. That's still cool. It just was like,
Akuma.
Akuma. It tripped me out. Like, what the? My notes actually say Tekken X Street Fighter. It's about damn time. And then followed with, it's Tekken 7.
Yeah,
right.
Tekken X Street Fighter supposedly was going to come out after 7 at this point. I don't know. It's been pretty foggy whether it's going to happen at all. It might be that them throwing Akuma into 7 is going to be their nod to it and that they're going to let it go.
I wouldn't doubt that. But it was kind of like, strange scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, the bright side is about them holding Tekken 7 off that long is that in the past what they've done is they've held off the Tekken games for American release so that they can have the second incarnation be the American release at the same time. So when all of the arcades get their new sticker add-on upgrade that turns it into a new game with 3 or 4 new characters that they can release at the same time in America with those same characters.
Yeah, that's pretty smart.
Hopefully that's what happens this time around and we don't get one version behind, but it's worked that way in the past, so here's hoping.
I was excited to see Recore footage.
Yes, and it's nowhere near what I expected, but it's very interesting. Again, it's the same 3/4 over the shoulder view, but much farther out than the Norse version of Kratos.
Lord Kratos?
It's being priced as
it's $40.
a quote-unquote bargain release, but Microsoft was very clear, and who knows how honest it is, but I like to believe that it's honest, is that it's a full release, but they realize that for a new IP, it's difficult to make that sale. And I'm sure that the original Titanfall is probably the big thing for them for the proof of that.
Yeah.
And especially considering that the first release of an IP generally is something that people complain about because it's pared down more than they expect.
Yeah.
Because It has to be.
Yeah, they're just trying to get it launched, let alone refined.
Exactly. And it's a problem across the board with all the new IPs, with Watch Dogs 1, with Assassin's Creed 1,
so on and
on
so
down
forth.
the line.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people are still surprised when the first generation of a game isn't 100% of what they expect it to be. But it's nice that at least they're acknowledging that we want people to at least give it a shot, so we're going to drop the price on it so that people will be more likely to give it that shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope they do that with more
I hope so
new
too.
IPs.
Yeah. A lot of people are pointing at Rare Replay as the first thing that they tried to do with that. I consider it kind of apples and oranges, but I can understand the comparison too.
Speaking of Rare, the Sea of Thieves got the enthusiastic nod of the better half here.
Oh, okay, that's good. I've heard nothing but complaints about it.
Oh, really?
I haven't actually. That's one of the few things that I didn't see from it, just because I watched all of the different elements of the show separately, and I had heard enough different things from people about that part that it was like, okay, well, I'll prioritize other things, so I didn't end up watching it. But yeah, it's good to hear. I'll watch it now.
It looks like fun to me. I mean, it suffers from the party play problem that almost any party play game has. But by that same token, it also, I mean, that if you have like 2 or 3 friends you like to play with, you can probably crew a small boat with that.
Since we haven't heard too much about it, can you like outline more about what it is?
Okay, so
You're a pirate. You go out adventuring. You can go on a ship. You have to like control the masts, the wheel, like all this stuff. Fire the cannon, and you come across other players. You go out and search for loot, that sort of thing. It's
okay.
So imagine Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but you have real humans as part of the crew.
Okay.
Just maybe without the like animus and stuff.
Without the anger?
Yes. No, that's avarice. The game has kind of a unique style visually, which I think sets it apart from a lot of the other games that have dropped.
That's what I liked about the little promo thing that they had like a year ago. I thought that was pretty neat. So they've played up that quite a bit. Yeah,
it's still there. I think one of the reasons why the better half likes it is that it harkens a little bit, it's not exact, but harkens back towards some of the style that comes out of like the Wind Waker game, whereas it doesn't look quote unquote realist, doesn't look quote unquote real. It has like a little bit of that Saturday morning cartoon as a 3D adventure.
I was wondering how much Monkey Island they were trying to channel, as far as style.
A little bit less extreme in terms of the character design, but it's still with a lot more flair than probably a lot of other games use.
Yeah, if you go and watch it, what they did was they grabbed like I think it was like 4 people, like 2 teams of 4 people. Didn't tell them how to do anything. Just dropped them into the world. And had them like communicate to each other, so they all like, "Hey, I found the ship. Okay, I'll pull down the mast. Oh, okay, we'll put it. Oh, okay, let's do that." And they started going across the sea, and then they would cut. The camera would cut to like the other side, kind of doing the same thing, and then like, "Oh, there's a ship coming! Oh, get the cannon on fire!" And then they'd cut to the other team, and they're like, "Oh, they're firing at us quick! Oh, they're aim, that was good!" And so it was like,
"We're drowning!
Yeah. What do we do? All this, and it was just like it was kind of a neat, fun thing of just showing how like you'll interact with people in the world, and
cool.
It looks like fun, I think.
Okay,
I think it captures that Rare feel that a lot of people wanted from Rare games. So most people would say we're stuck doing Connect games, and so this is kind of them returning to.
It would have been interesting if they made this the last gasp of Connect games. Yeah, the thing that I'd heard repeatedly about it was that people were concerned about the evolve effect, effectively.
That will be something that will probably be continue to be a problem. But that's like almost any team-based game at this point. But
it sounds like they had a pretty good counter to that. If it was people that didn't necessarily know each other all getting together to do it for the first time.
Yeah,
it sounds like a pretty good selling point to me.
Yeah,
it sounds like they've balanced the complexity of the game with the option of letting people just kind of like run around and do their thing without like overly interfering with the way the world works.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, because I mean, it sounds like it's not required for you to play like as a team with other people. So it'll be curious how the world itself is like while you're out adventuring. If like, hey, I can still have a ton of fun solo, but if I come across people, we can man these ships. Or if it if it is like, no, you need. I mean, it looks like in order to man some of these ships and actually use them, that you will need a crew to this thing. So it's hopefully it's able to kind of do the Overwatch thing where it sort of like forces people to work together if you really want to, succeed and do it. So,
or it might throw in AI crewmates for some of the roles that you can't, as a player, can't fill. So
yeah, there's plenty of ways to try and convince people to do things like that too. So I can imagine it being part of a daily challenge that would be worth extra loot or something like that.
Yeah. Like strikes and Destiny and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it looks like this, and then they came out and did some things for live, like updates, that sort of things. It looks like you're getting background music this summer. A lot of people were happy about that announcement.
Yeah, I got a lot more cheers than I was expecting it to.
It's been something I've missed since mid-cycle 360. That I'm surprised, like they got rid of it and then brought it back a second and then got rid of it again, even on that console. I don't understand why it's been so difficult to keep around.
I wonder if it might be because of streaming. Like people they don't have a license to restream some of the music that the players might have.
I know Microsoft has been more careful about things like that than most, but I'm kind of surprised because they can obviously screen out channels of sound if they want to.
Yeah, they might have figured that out with this one. They might have the codecs.
The funniest thing to me is that the TV that I have has that as a feature. And so it's like, yeah, I finally got it. I can do this again. Oh, Microsoft is going to have it for me fairly soon, so I probably won't use that feature all that much.
You never know.
Yeah, you might.
Yeah, one of the others was clubs.
Right.
Kind of briefly a little of that. You can kind of start your own little, it almost seemed like a not so serious clan. Kind of like
Clans Light.
It's definitely smart for things like Destiny and The Division. It allows you to put people together a lot more effectively to be able to do stuff like raids on the fly and so on.
Yeah. It's funny. It's almost like it's weird because they have the looking for group,
right,
and the clubs like almost. Not quite the same, but like where one is lets you like, hey, this is what I'm looking for,
and then lets you keep those people once you have them.
Yeah,
yeah.
The other thing that they mentioned, I believe, is the
arena.
Arena
competitive brackets,
which I know is a huge deal to all of the YouTubers I came across because it allows them to put together championships or whatnot with their viewership, and allows them to coordinate with people on a level that most consoles hadn't allowed unless they do some sort of crazy thing that they have to pay obscene amounts of money for. And
that's a good
now
point.
people can just do it on their whim, that it's built into the system, and people are pretty happy about that.
That's cool. Yeah,
That's something I hadn't even thought of either.
Yeah. So in a weird sort of way, it's perfect synergy with the YouTube movement.
Or even the Twitch, group. I'm sure that
YouTube.
Oh
them
man,
too.
throw down.
No, I guess if you like Twitch, that's fine. I think you're in error. But no, I fully plan on twitching fairly soon, so I'm just kidding. Don't hurt me, Twitch.
What did you guys think of We Happy Few?
I saw promo stuff of it a long time ago. It looked really interesting, but them fleshing out the systems of how it actually functions makes it much more interesting now. I still didn't see all of the footage that I feel like I need to, but I heard people talking about different stuff that sounded fairly creepy and fairly nice.
That was you.
Yeah. I saw that.
When the pinata,
Yeah.
the flash,
Yeah.
like, whoa, that's not a pinata.
Yeah. It was almost like the first. I got a similar sort of like reaction to it that I got from some of the elements of the first BioShock game.
I've heard a lot of people
Yeah.
Where I was
comparing
like,
it to that.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's
Microsoft
very-
themselves have said that when they came across this developer putting together this game, that they saw the same thing and could tell that it was something that had so much potential that they couldn't pass up on it.
Yeah, it looks pretty solid. And I like the way it kind of echoes the things I liked about BioShock 1 while taking things in their own weird new direction.
Yeah.
They've still been fairly clear that it's an indie title with limited scope. So I think they're being careful not to let people get super passionate about some giant game or anything like that. But
I mean, the nice thing is it's coming to game preview next month.
Next month,
Right.
that's right. Yes, I might be trying that one out.
And one of the things they also pointed out is that for their game previews, it's worked out really well for them, specifically because Arc, even though it's nowhere near being a complete thing, and they're giving away Windows 10 versions of Arc right now. That even with that stipulation, it's sold incredibly well and made both the company and them a lot of money.
Yeah.
Is the way they put it. So hopefully We Happy Few ends up in the same camp.
Yeah.
And maybe if it makes that much money, it can end up being a larger game, since it sounds like that's the main concern with it at the moment.
Yeah.
Or if We Happy Few isn't a longer game, maybe there'll be an expansion or a sequel that will be a bigger experience. So you have more than
Either
just the one.
either episodic or a DLC or something like that.
Yeah, I just hope. I mean, they kind of hinted at it, but I hope they get more and more games into the game preview. It seems that they kind of made it seem like there'll be more. I just hope they start to do it on a more regular basis. So, because that is basically early access for consoles.
Exactly.
So it's like, don't let this program die. Like, this is a really cool feature.
Yeah.
People should be talking about this. Like,
Yeah. Like us talking about it right now.
yeah.
Right.
And they had, the ID at Xbox. They came out, showed off Cuphead again. Did you hear about they didn't say it at the press conference, but that the platforming elements added to
I've seen the promo footage of the platforming. I don't know how to feel about it at its current level, but they're not done with it, so it's hard to say what it's going to turn out like.
Yeah.
It sounds like either the brothers in charge of the game or Xbox in general put a little bit more pressure on fleshing out the game more than just boss fights, and that's what ended up creating this. And the way that they're going to end up using it apparently is as the map unlock system is. In order to get into all the new areas, you have to do all the normal platforming stuff. That said, the controls seem very similar. All of the same little air sprints and whatnot work very nicely. What I thought was more interesting is I saw a little chunk of a preview of a boss battle that showed the item buying system. So there's going to be places that you can go and buy. It reminded me of the Bastion game, because remember in that it had different like tonics and spirits.
Yeah,
it's the exact same thing in this, except it plays it up a lot more as like an old timey like brewery or something like that.
Nice.
But the abilities that you can get off of it are actually really interesting. Like the little air sprint maneuver that you can do in the game, one of them allows it turns it into a bamf instead. And so it's literally like you disappear in a puff of smoke and reappear in a puff of smoke, which allows you to evade things much easier. And so it allows you to kind of treat it like a perk system in a weird sort of way.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But obviously they're like swapped out or exhausted during maps and whatnot. So it sounded really interesting.
Yeah, I think I would say, because I heard some mentioning of like, well, there wasn't any indie stuff at the Sony press conference.
Exactly.
But there was at Microsoft. To me, I think Sony doesn't really have to advertise that anymore.
No.
Nope.
But Microsoft still has to. So
I'll admit that's one of the things I'm extra salty about, just because Sony can effectively just take it for granted, and they're definitely doing that. So yeah, I was really tempted to do my own version of some little broadcast like this and title it something along the lines of "Sony doesn't care about indies anymore?" ?
Clickbait number 43.
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
But it's not untrue. But it is
100%.
Yeah. But yeah, it's still it was cool to see. Still. We saw some of the ones we've seen before, some new ones added on there, and it's good to hear. I mean, they didn't give like exact numbers on stuff, but it was cool to hear that it sounds like they're getting more and more developers. Games are selling well.
Over 1,000 games in development on the ID platform. Those a couple that looked really cool, like Below. It's a from Capybara. Capybara is like become one of my new favorite like development houses. They make great little games. I like them a lot. Everspace looked kind of fun. I'm like, it reminds me of X-Wing, and it's like up for like 5 seconds. So I don't know if that's much to judge it by. But I'm like, that looks cool. Yeah, Cuphead. I'm like, I don't care about a demo of Cuphead. I want to play Cuphead.
We had the opportunity to play Cuphead.
I did. I did play Cuphead. Okay, but I want the game.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, and then they showed off this one was funny because they showed off State of Decay 2, which I'm excited about. I enjoyed State of Decay, but like
a major surprise hit for last generation of Xbox.
Yeah.
I tweeted at the Undead Lab guys and was like, oh, hey, you guys going to be at E3 kind of thing? And I got a tweet back from them like, yeah, we're going to be there. We don't have anything to show off, but we're going to be there. Hey, do you want to go? Like, as far as I think they were having like a open little fan thing or something like that. But I was like, oh, I wish I could, but I'm not going to be in LA. Blah blah blah. They lied to me. They announced the State of Decay 2. They said it didn't have anything to announce. And, I was like, obviously, they're not going to say they wanted it to be a surprise.
It's funny too because you can totally imagine them doing replies like that because they have no idea who's really on the other side.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like who knows who you're posing as?
Yeah.
NDA says we can't just say things, but we can hand out tickets to come down to the event because we have this many to give away.
Yeah. The other one that I was excited about. I'm a little bummed that doesn't have Nick from 3, but Dead Rising 4. I'm pumped for that.
Oh, okay.
That's.
I'm surprised how many people are really really excited about having that character back.
Yeah, Frank.
Yeah.
The one from 2, right?
First one.
He's the original one, yeah.
Yeah. I always got the impression that nobody liked him, and now everybody seems to love him.
I think it's one of those, like, it. To me, I guess he's kind of like for like Barry from Resident Evil, as far as just like Japan was confused why everyone in America loved Barry so much. It's just like, I think there's like Frank, there's really, he is kind of a dumb character, but there's something sort of like
endearing about him.
Yeah, just he's got dumb lines with like, I've shot wars, man. Like I've photographed wars, and just I think it's just I think because he was from that first Dead Rising, and it was so popular with the 360 early on. It was one of those big games that it's just there's some of that attachment to it. It just kind of brings it back. So just to have it like Frank is back, and everyone's like, yeah, all right, we're actually playing as Frank.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people super excited that they get Frank back with modern gaming.
Yeah,
effectively.
Maybe they'll solve the jump problem.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and
the promo stuff for it looks so cool. All the different masks and whatnot. Oh man.
Yeah,
freaking Triceratops head.
That was cool.
Yeah. It looked like they're taking a bunch of the stuff from 3 and just adding more and neat things. The like selfie system sounds great. Like it sounds so dumb, but it's like sounds great. Just like you can,
which they're adding to Watch Dogs 2 also. I thought was interesting.
But yeah, and they didn't like really come out and say it during the press conference, but it is Xbox One and PC.
There was a lot of confusion about that because when it came out that it was going to be showing up at the conference, there was no information about who it belonged to, if anything. A lot of people assumed early on that it would have been Xbox, but since there was nothing that said, people assumed that it was across the board for the first time. But yeah, obviously not.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing the same thing they did with 3 and publishing it with Capcom Vancouver and doing. I think it makes sense. I don't know how well the third one sold, but like just the first one did. So the first one is associated a lot, I think, with the 360 since it's the one it was on. But so it just that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. Capcom is an interesting company to me just because it's had so many missteps lately. But for some reason, they seem to be doing good with these games. It seems to be one of their shining points right now. So hopefully it continues that way.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't super surprised, but a little bit that there wasn't any further stuff on HoloLens, mostly because in the preview program, when I was scrolling through like movies, and it lists like what you can watch stuff on, like there's a HoloLens like symbol in there. Like
really?
There's a head with the goggles, and it's like this is what's supported on. It's like Xbox One, 360, like Surface tablet, and the very last one is HoloLens. So it's like, whoa, okay. Like,
Interesting.
but no mention of it.
I guess support. Well, now that every Xbox One is a dev kit, effectively, maybe that's why they need to support it since it's being sold as dev kit. But I don't know.
Yeah. Also, too, like people mention like, oh, they didn't talk about Crackdown 3, or there's some things that weren't mentioned. I have a feeling there's stuff that they're saving for Gamescom. Yeah, because that's what they did last year. Like they saved some stuff for that one. So that's
it's the biggest European show. So it's like this is the biggest American show. Then we have the big European show, and maybe we'll say then what the France Paris game.
Yeah, Paris
Gamescom is the first big one after E3 that is an actual public show.
Yeah,
so
it's open to the public.
Actually, put a lot of effort into trying to save some really good stuff for that. So yeah, hopefully that's the case.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good way to earn some goodwill with
Germans,
with non-Americans.
Well, and that's the sort of misnomer too that a lot of people don't realize. The one that I just tried to perpetuate is that even though it happens in Germany, it's apparently the biggest show that people travel from across all of Europe to go to, since it has such high numbers because it is open.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's one of the bigger conferences in gaming. Period, and it's pretty cool that way too. A lot of indies also show up there as well, since that's the public stuff. I bet.
Yeah. I think in a weird way, like Microsoft sort of like, I don't want to say failing with the Xbox One, but being sort of the underdog.
Yeah,
has allowed them to dropping like the Xbox One S, and doing the Scorpio. Like, it's kind of allowed them to take these steps without like kind of the backlash that possibly Sony can have with the Neo, as far as like people were already down on the Xbox One.
Yeah.
Here's, with Scorpio, the promise of the most powerful console ever, reaching out to develop, like they stress, like, we want to support like VR, so we're creating a machine that doesn't require you to get a separate box, doesn't require you, like, it's the all-in-one package deal here.
The thing that I've heard as the main selling point of Scorpio versus Neo, which who knows what names they'll come up with in the future, but for now, that's what we got, is that Scorpio has been very clear that they're keeping it forwards and backwards compatible. And that's something that PlayStation hasn't necessarily done. It still comes with a lot of the same problems, especially for developers, and arguably to a much larger extent, because developing for 4K versus 1080p is massive.
Yeah.
Just as far as textures and bundling all that information and trying to get your product to the person over a broadband connection. It's a lot of craziness that I don't think people realize what they're in for quite yet. But at the same time, they've, again, been fairly honest about what they want to do, what their goals are, and that they're not trying to do anything tricky. And it's something that I've, again, heard from the kind of funny guys that or at least from one of them, the Colin Moriarty, who I'm getting to respect more and more because he's willing to at least question PlayStation here and there. I'm glad that there are people that are super passionate about their system. That's cool. But I like that he actually analyzes things from time to time. It's nice. So when I hear him talking about the PlayStation and some of the problems, at least with the optics of how they've sold the Neo so far, and the things that people have been hearing from the different developers about how PlayStation has been dealing with them when it comes to the Neo, it sounds like it's apples and oranges as far as how the two companies are treating the developers. So who knows how well that'll play up, because like you mentioned, developers seem relatively psyched about the Scorpio.
Yeah.
Versus Neo, it sounds like extra homework. So I'm surprised it cuts that way, but it sounds like for all of the goodwill that sounds like it's burnt with the general public on Microsoft, it doesn't sound like it's necessarily that way with the development community. So hopefully that creates more opportunities in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully with giving the developers this heads up. I mean, who knows? I'm sure they've had even longer than the public. This, will allow them, hey, we're giving you all this extra power to play around with and all this extra time.
And Phil
wild.
Spencer has actually come out after the presentation and said that was one of the things that was his goal by putting the Scorpio at the tail of it, is that he wanted to be as upfront as possible with developers specifically, even if they weren't necessarily in the loop or whatnot.
Yeah.
That everybody at least knows that they can be we're developing with this thing in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be an outgrowth of a bunch of different people coming up with pretty clever upscaling algorithms for their textures for the development.
Yeah, in certain companies I know have already been angling that way. I know Ubisoft has talked specifically about the way that they've been designing their engines is built around trying to do stuff like that more automated than a lot of other systems would. The Division is actually a huge example of that. The crazy amount of detail that they put into every frame of that game is down to them having an automated system that populates areas with stuff without them having to stress about doing it. And that same type of system can easily be employed in a 4K environment.
It's computers doing what computers do best, which is compute things.
Right. It makes it so you don't necessarily have the exact same image as somebody else, except for the broad strokes. But do you really need that?
It's like if the cover piece is in its correct place, and if the enemies are in their proper locations, and the bullet tracking is going where it's supposed to, it's kind of a semantics at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, something I forgot to mention when we were talking about Sony was it was interesting. I didn't see anything about Destiny.
Yeah, I didn't. No one talked about Destiny as far as I can tell.
There were those leaks about the new expansion sort of thing, but
it's so
surprised.
weird having Destiny kind of be. Well, Bungie can kind of be out in the cold. But that said, they're still an immensely powerful company just on their own, even with the limited number of games that they have. And at this point, they have such good mobilization as far as being able to get their message out to the community that is still really dedicated to that game. I still play it a lot. But the other side of it is that by the sheer numbers, apparently, Division is doing better at the moment, and that got mostly ignored too from a lot of people. So,
it had a trailer spot in the Xbox presentation, but that was about it.
It was at the Ubisoft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Actually, it was interesting because they came out there, they showed off the next expansion,
the Underdark or Underground or something like that.
Yeah, and then they teased and they said you'll be able to play that first on Xbox One and PC the end of June, and then everyone else August, and then they teased the expansion 2 a little bit and talked about that. And showed actually kind of a cool trailer. It was called Survival or something. You should check it out. It's a snow all this like snow kind of thing.
okay.
It was really cool.
Yeah, the thing that I'd heard about the new Underground stuff that was interesting to me, that again plays off of the same generation, is game generation stuff, is that it has whatchamacallit, is that the levels are randomly generated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, my thought was, it's Tom Clancy's The Diablo.
yeah. Yeah, it's not a direction I expected them to go, but it makes perfect sense with the technology that they have.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot more sense for the Underground than it would for Above Ground, since they were trying to go for street by street
Yeah.
New York.
This is New York,
Yeah.
post-apocalypse.
Right. The only problem that I've heard with that so far from a lot of people is that the Division already has major problems with you feeling kind of isolated from everybody else. You put yourself underground and it doubles down on those problems. So
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they
especially
take
if
it.
you're in a procedurally generated arena that you're almost guaranteed not to see anybody else with, unless you brought them with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes it very much like Tom Clancy's Diablo,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say
which is not to denigrate the game. It's kind of funny. The like what's old is new again, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It's an amazing game from a lot of perspectives, but it definitely has some very big weaknesses too.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I wish there was maybe they're saving something for Gamescom, like we kind of mentioned, but I do wish there was like at least one trailer for, even if it's a game that's not coming out relatively soon, just some sort of kind of wow, like, oh, what is that? Like,
Yeah, the one thing that was brought up by I believe Tim Geddes off of the Kind of Funny crew, that at first I was like really angry at them for declaring Sony like the winner, and them doing like the whoa, they just did it. I can't believe they brought the hammer and whatnot. I don't think they actually said that, but Tim had one point that I thought was really good, is that even if a lot of this stuff isn't coming out right away, or you don't know when it's coming out, it adds an excitement factor that you don't have if everything's guaranteed at a certain time.
Yeah.
Because it gives you something that's like year to year. You're like, oh, I wonder if this is going to be here. I wonder if this is going to be here. And that is arguably a weakness with the way that Microsoft handled things this time around.
Yeah.
So
it's like I don't want too much of that, because then it's like, okay, am I
it
ever
feels
going to get
cheap
anything?
if you use a ton of it.
But one or two, it's a neat kind of way. So
Yeah, it felt like with this E3, like Microsoft was very much about solid statements about what they have and what they have to offer. And the only thing that was we don't have all the details to give you just yet was Project Scorpio. And that was kind of like, and they had a lot of details about Project Scorpio from in the announcement, but like that's kind of like the
Heck, all you really need is the 6 teraflops. That's a heck of a flop right there.
it's a
Flump. That's laying it on the table.
that's a bunch of triangles for sure. But I mean, like that. But so I think they were trying to show that there was that Microsoft wasn't slacking. That they weren't flagging. They weren't going away. They just it's like this. We are a solid place that you can go for your gaming. We are a solid place you can go for your development.
yeah.
And there is something to aspire to. It's not a game. It's a console. It's a new breed of console you can aspire to, that you can reach. That it's like this is going to take your reach and just extend it again, because you can have the VR. You can have don't want to VR. Okay, you can still get 4K HDR gaming. It'll be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, because like now that they've made the Scorpio, official, that sort of thing, the idea of like, oh well, software sells hardware, is like the PlayStation 4 kind of changed that, because like first party titles, the PlayStation 4 doesn't have that many right now.
Yeah, they like added.
It almost never has.
Yeah, but it has, but the ones that it has are really impressive, really popular.
They're a big draw.
So, but they, have a bunch of third parties. That's what everybody jumped on. And, like a bunch of people have bought in PS4s despite a first party thing. And that, like, Microsoft is still pushing that, like they're still trying to put out, like, first party software, despite the fact that, like, well, it's not really selling consoles, but we're sticking with that. We're sticking with our guns. We want to build our library of exclusives. We want to build that. So I'm glad in a sense that they're still doing that, even though it's not selling consoles. I mean, we look at the sales. Microsoft has more first-party exclusives, but it's not selling consoles.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they're sticking with wanting to build their studios, building their library, and keeping it going. And I think that in the long run, that will, I think, help them.
Yeah, if nothing else, in some ways, it will keep them endeared to the gaming public, because, I mean, Nintendo has a similar... not the exact same as a similar thing where it's like, we make the best Nintendo games there are, and the best place to find them is on Nintendo. Yeah. I mean, I realize that's a recursive statement, but like it's
funny. I like it.
It's kind of a similar thing. Like, the Xbox may not be the single biggest ecosystem, although that could be argued with the Play Anywhere, but they are still making the best Xbox experience that they can make. And so I think it's a very worthwhile way to pursue it.
I mean, I think Sony is more like Nintendo, honestly. Like their exclusives, like they have that sort of stamp to them of Sony. Like, it's like, oh, okay, you can tell, like when you see like Last of Us, these big games that are like, that's got that sort of Sony touch, like you associate it with. To me, Microsoft doesn't really have that yet. Like, the biggest thing is like Halo,
right?
Like it's
Halo
still
and Forza.
And Gears now, I think, to an extent is
right.
now that they own it, they're But I don't think like there's not as many things you can kind of tie with Microsoft yet, and I think that's what they're trying to do right now is build that first party up so people associate these things like, oh, that's a Microsoft like feel to it. That's a Microsoft game. Nintendo's got that. I think Sony's got that. I think Microsoft is still, it's building that. I think that's what, because that's what they've said. I think it was in that also that kind of funny thing is like, we're trying to focus on our exclusives, putting out more and more of those, like building our library of games that you can find here, and I think that's it'll be curious to see.
And it sounds like they've done a lot of prioritization on that too. I mean, obviously they've backed off Kinect. It's still sad about it, but I understand.
I don't blame them. I just think it's not my favorite choice they've made.
But also with their choices as far as dropping studios like Lionhead. It's not a popular choice, and it might create some enemies in the future. But at the same time, you can kind of see how those resources would be reallocated to things that they know are going to work. It's like if you can imagine them taking those resources and dropping them into an indie dev, for instance, that you already know your dollar is going a lot farther for the money, it makes more sense, and you'll get more credit for it in the long run.
And kind of just building like an example I sort of is the HBO series Vinyl.
Okay.
Apparently, I guess it wasn't like terribly. Critics didn't care for it that much, and I guess it wasn't super popular as far as fans, people talking about it. But HBO decided to renew it anyway because they wanted to keep. They didn't want to burn the bridges with the people who were associated with, like Martin Scorsese, Mick Jagger, like all these big names. They'd rather keep them close to them instead of just like, well, the series didn't do that well, let's cut our ties. I kind of am curious too if Microsoft is going to do a similar thing, like teaming up with Inafune and like these different sort of somewhat kind of bigger names that you don't associate like Microsoft with normally. Like even if Scalebound or Record doesn't sell terribly well, like it's kind of a build thing of like, hey, made this game art, you like working with us, we can keep this relationship going. Like I think it's Kojima and like Sony, it's like it's not it didn't surprise me at all that Kojima went over to Sony when he got free.
I had high hopes,
like,
but
it's like, so I'm curious to see, hopefully that's kind of something that maybe Microsoft starts to do also, like, hey, this didn't work out super well. It's a huge seller game, but we liked working with you. We still believe in your vision. Like,
let's try again.
Let's make some more games. Let's do this or that. But
I'm kind of hoping, like I mentioned earlier, that it seems like a lot of companies are trying to kind of build rock stars. And Sony didn't have to work too hard. They already had one in the wings. They just treated him like a rock star, and that was the end of the picture. But other people are trying to build those faces and those presences. Xbox has had them in the past, but they've been people that end up being disappointing in the public eye, like Molyneux and whatnot. So it seems like they need to get into the process of kind of rebuilding those and putting people in front of the camera and getting people psyched about some of the smaller studios, because the small studios, when they do something right, they become bigger studios and do grander and grander things. The thing that I still feel like is one of the biggest missteps for Microsoft is they got first dibs on the Bastion game. And so eventually it ended up on other systems, and somewhere between all of that, they didn't build a good enough relationship with that company, and the next game ended up going to PlayStation. Eventually it ended up coming to PC, so effectively it ends up being a Microsoft sort of property anyway, but it hardly matters at that point. And so now they're, after 2 games in, building bigger and bigger games. Their next game is going to be a full-on, maybe not AAA, but an A title. And they missed out on that. That's sad to me.
But I think that's also probably why they're doing a lot more stuff with like Capybara and some of the other like indie titles, like trying to, or that We Happy Few. Like it's like,
I'm sure they feel it.
This is a game that has like really unique functions, and so maybe, or a company that has a unique vision that we can maybe help them develop it further with a little bit of funding and stuff.
I think just overall, like mentioned, I think last year, it's like it's an exciting time to be a gamer. No matter what system you got. I mean, everyone's all made missteps. Wish they did certain things better, but
I've heard a lot of people putting it this way, is that it's the first time that they can think of that there's been so much good stuff coming at them from all angles that it's impossible to even play it all. And it sounds like across the board, people can't think of a time in history where that's been the case. So yeah, it's pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of want people to scale back the production of games just a smidgen so I can keep up.
It would be nice. I don't. It's
not going to happen.
Yeah,
it's like saying Hollywood just slow down a little bit. Like no, we got pedal to the floor and we're going to keep pushing down.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. The second the news leaked, the video game industry was effectively bigger than the movie industry. That was the end of it. It's just going to get bigger from here on unless something really obscenely disappointing happens that crushes the industry for a little while.
Yeah.
But I don't see like something like arcades dissolving happening again in anytime soon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, just the success of both the PS4 and the Xbox One outselling their previous consoles. You
Right.
know? I'm like, that just kind of proves like,
So
like,
quickly,
would anybody,
too.
do people still want a new console? It's like,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, it's still.
And at the end of the last console generation, people were arguing very seriously, I think this is the end of consoles.
Yeah.
Like, oh, nope. This console still got some legs.
Right.
Yeah, it's hopefully if we can just solve the fanboy, the crazy fan thing.
Unfortunately, I think the only thing that will solve that is if consoles get down to the price where people don't feel like they need to protect their purchase. That's what it's going to take, and I don't think we'll get there anytime soon. I think the amount of power that people demand is going to keep that in a very special but unfortunate zone.
Yeah.
So they need to become almost like cell phones, like where it's like
Exactly.
the price of the subject is so low that it's almost
Either that or
irrelevant.
bundled with a service that makes them affordable really quickly. I mean, Xbox played with that idea for a little while, and I'm still surprised that we haven't heard any more about how well that worked or if it did at all, if it ended up boosting their sales last generation or not. Because it was a really interesting idea because it's what has made the cell phone market as crazy as it is bundling things with a service.
Yeah, hard to say.
Yeah. So, one last thing regarding the Scorpio. How much do you think it's going to be?
I think it's going to be 600.
600, you think?
I think they'd like to have it be 500, but for the first time, I think they're going to feel like they have the initiative where they can push that price. Like, they felt like they could do it with Xbox One, and they were obviously wrong.
Partly because they bundled in the Kinect, which people were not certain they wanted.
Yeah. But even this time, because they're fighting Sony on their own terms with just a flop. And as bad as that may sound from whatever direction, but yeah, I feel like they are going to feel like they can pull it off. And the only danger for that is whether Sony does an about face on their current plans and scraps things. But like I said, that's more painful to Sony than it is to Microsoft. Well, I didn't put it exactly this way, but it's more painful to Sony than it is to Microsoft because Microsoft makes way more money in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Because people forget Microsoft is gigantic in software and it's making so much money off of software. They are making so much more money off software even just giving away Windows 10 than Sony is making off of their entire hardware division. And it's easy to forget that because it feels like a durable good should be worth more than something that just sort of exists out there.
What do you think?
I Actually, I think the console price point of $600 probably will be about right. I wonder if there will be like a bundle version, which is like $750 or something like that comes with a HoloLens, perhaps, or something like that. Or maybe an 800.
I think
maybe
they're
an
still
800.
going to hold HoloLens for a long time from everything that I've seen, because I'm right in the middle of the entire industry.
I knew the HoloLens thing. Yeah, it's
deep in dev territory right now.
Well, but it's approaching the subject from a slightly different angle, and it's got a little bit different focus on it as well. So,
and the other thing that was
getting back to the console, I think the baseline.
Yeah, bundles aside, just like straight up console, obviously with a controller and stuff. But
Yeah,
no, just control it with your mind.
Yeah.
The essential elements. Yeah,
Connect 3.0 with your mind.
Oh God.
It's bundled with a scorpion tail that you hook into it.
I'd still say probably around 600. It seems likely. Maybe they'll like do a promotional like 550 or something like that, so it doesn't look that much more expensive than a regular 1S. How about you? What's your suspicion?
I say 500.
Mm-hmm.
Only because of, I mean, I get it, like how powerful it's, theoretically, like end up being, like when it's all said and done. I just think they look back. Any console over $500
has had a real hard time.
Had a real hard time. It doesn't matter how powerful it is. Like if nobody buys it because it's too expensive, that's why I think 500 is, because what the PS3 was like 600.
I believe so.
When it first came out,
more than that, from what I remember.
But it was I think 500 is that point where you're like, it's a lot, but not too much. Like you look at like, okay, this does a lot of things. All right, that's worth it. 6, I don't know. Do I want to just buy like a PC? Like the old kind of arguments of if you actually stopped and broke it down, like it's a lot cheaper to go this route. But
right.
But yeah, I'm gonna say 500.
Okay. There's actually,
I prefer that more than 600, but I'm not saying it just because that's what I'd want it. I'm just like, I think
it's smarter that way.
There's a decent chance that might, and that's why I think it might be 550, where it's like it's not just the one over again. This is actually the like 1 plus, for lack of a better phrase. So like maybe they might be able to take like a slight premium on it, but still be like, it's only a little bit more than what it costs to get a regular one right now.
And the other side of it, too, is it depends completely on when it's released. Because the longer they push it, the cheaper it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it said holiday 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, that was at the end of the video.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it's coming out next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and it'll be interesting to see
barring any unforeseen stuff.
Right.
But, so you imagine next E3 is going to be like a blowout of what it's going to.
Here is our VR headset. This is the VR experience we will be giving you.
Yeah, I'm really hoping, despite not absolutely loving Fallout 4, but since Todd Howard has said like removing Fallout 4 to VR, and he was in one of the videos. I'm really hoping that at next year's E3, he's like, yeah, here's Fallout 4 on VR on the Scorpio. Like,
there's a lot of interesting connections right now between all of the different industry people. The thing that's been interesting too is that kind of the obvious thing would be that Microsoft has some sort of relationship with Oculus because of the controller being part of their ecosystem, but everything's pointing actually towards the Vive being Microsoft's VR platform of choice.
The Vive is not so far off from what the the one has in terms if you have a Kinect, it's not too far off from what they can kind of do with that already.
That's the one they were using at the Minecraft demonstration, I think, too.
No,
was it a
no, that was an Oculus, because it was John Carmack who's the head of Oculus.
Okay.
Or a Rift, I should say.
Rift, yeah, okay.
So
that makes sense.
it will be interesting to see if they do try and do something with the Kinect and the Scorpio, because
The Kinect?
yeah, the Kinect 2.
Oh, I don't think.
Hear me out for a second,
Okay.
because the one of the things that
I understand where you're going because the technology is very similar.
yeah, and it's like the Vive. The one of the things that makes it sort of like unique compared to the Rift is that they have two cameras that sense you where you are in the room, and with that you can get a sense of motion and depth in the interaction with the virtual world through the helmet that you don't get with as much with the Oculus.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they might say this peripheral will give you this extra dimension in usage.
They have to be very careful with how they market the Kinect, because it is very tainted. As much as I love my Kinect, a lot of people, when they hear that, think it's garbage. They like the voice stuff. That's about the only thing that they kind of hear, but most people are like, that stupid thing, wiggle game, they got it. If they're going to implement it, which I think would be cool, they have to be very careful how they market that thing, because, it just has a lot lot of juju to it. Which is sad.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing that a lot of the same people that went absolutely nuts for Wii doing the same stuff, for some reason Kinect is unholy.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that set everybody off was in light of the Edward Snowden releases, having a quote unquote always on microphone, like just people's paranoia just like all of a sudden went out of control, and that sent a lot of things down a rabbit hole.
We can get into
but
why people don't like the Kinect and all that stuff, but just related with tying it back into the Scorpio, I can totally see the benefits. It's just they got to be really careful, and just the way that they're angling it now, Kinect is dead.
You got no mention at this, and no mention of it with the Scorpio project. So we have yet to see what it actually will be like, because we have no other details other than it's got a really rockin' processor.
Yeah.
So
what it will come down to is what the ports on the back of the Scorpio look like. That'll be the determining factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm thinking too, like with the 500, even if I'm willing to bet that they'll, even if they have to take a little bit of a hit, it's worth it if they can get all those Scorpios into homes and be like, this is the most powerful console ever.
Yeah,
here it is. But it'll be. Oh man, so it's it's
I want to believe it, and I a lot of what I've seen with Phil Spencer has been really heartening. But to me, the scary part is that he is definitely the pilot of everything, but he's not necessarily the person in charge of everything. And so if bigger words fly than his, it might crash and burn simply because of a price.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have shown that the Xbox division is one of the few that has any real quote-unquote fan acclaim and autonomy. It's been consistently upheld as people like this brand. It's had its problems, but people like the Xbox brand. Microsoft, greater or lesser degrees, but Xbox has always been a well-regarded brand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, since it's part of the Xbox One family, the Scorpio or whatever it ends up being, it'll be curious to see what, by the time they get close to announcing a price or information, more information, like how much the Xbox One is, how much the Xbox S is, and kind of see like, okay, like kind of match, like, okay, is this one, does the Xbox One drop even more? Does the S get a drop? Does it stay? And then kind of see like, okay, this is X amount of money more. Like, would it make sense that it would only be $100 more or $200 more? Like, then it might give us a kind of a better idea too of.
Yeah, I could see them doing like the S at 300, the One at 400, and then the Scorpio at 500.
Wait, the One will always be the cheaper one of the Xbox One.
Yeah,
the Xbox S will be more expensive for.
Yeah, it already is by $50.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Never mind.
Yeah, the Xbox One that we have will be the low one.
Yeah,
that's
the original, right?
As sad as I hate to say it,
Yeah.
It's the first the early adopter problem is like, when you jump in on the very first version of the thing, there's going to be a revision.
But
yeah.
I've enjoyed the hell out of my Xbox One, so that's
I've gotten my value out of it for sure.
So
honestly, I wrote it off a long time ago as being the cost of being in on the ground floor of something, which is the first time I've ever been in on the ground floor of something. So that was exciting enough for me.
Yeah. Yep. Excitement for the future. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, good stuff.
It was. I feel like it was in general a good show. Like everyone seemed to bring a lot of really good things to the table, and like we said not so long ago, gaming is bigger than movies, so it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and you got that mix of here's some stuff that's coming out this year or relatively soon, and then so some had here's some stuff coming in a few years. So
yeah.
Nice mix.
Any other final words or? Yeah. Any other final thoughts?
I guess. Okay, one question, sort of like with the Neo thing. Do you think Sony will scrap whatever they have right now of the Neo and do something with? To compete more with Scorpio, or do you think they'll still do a Neo thing and still try and come up with something to compete with the Scorpio?
I think they would do it in a second if they could, and it all comes down to how invested they are in the Neo already. And I don't know if anybody knows that, since these part deals are so secret these days. It's still amazing to me that such a gigantic amount of production can be safely hidden from the world.
Yeah.
in a world where practically everything got leaked for E3.
Yeah. I mean, do you see a problem of like, okay, they drop the Neo and say it's basically like the Xbox S, maybe a little bit, maybe a little better, since depending upon whatever it was, you know, like, is it still like a bad thing? Like,
I don't think they'll be hurt by it. I think their fan base is fairly strong right now, and the fan base has been a little bit critical of the Neo as it stands. So scrapping it and going for something that would beat out Microsoft, I'm sure people who are already invested in the system would consider it a win for their fanboy ways.
Yeah.
So I don't see how it's a loss for them to do that if it's possible.
Yeah. I guess the trick is that since they said holiday 2017 for Scorpio, it's like, well, if the Neo drops next year, obviously the comparison is going to be the Neo and Scorpio, and clearly the Scorpio seems to be the way more powerful thing.
Right. By almost twice as much.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Sony responds, because it sounds like they're like, if they're with their VR headset like already priced and ready to ship, there's a decent chance that they have already committed pretty heavily to whatever the Neo is going to be.
I think so too.
I'm not saying they can't. That it. If I've learned anything from watching technology companies, never bet against them scrapping it and trying something new. But it seems and also showing off the Resident Evil 7 VR stuff. Like I'm not saying impossible, but it sounds like it looks to me like they're pretty deep into this thing being one particular thing, or else they're going to have to push. But since they didn't give a release date for Resident Evil 7, they can always just push that back.
January.
Oh, January? All right.
End of January.
So
that's, again, that could still get pushed. But
yeah, it's going to get pushed.
One they mentioned.
Yeah, and but also, like, since they also said it isn't necessarily a VR only experience or intended experience, they can also just release that version, and then when the VR thing is ready, they can say, oh yeah, and download this edition pack for free, and then you'll be ready for the Ultra HD VR experience. So
yeah, I guess it really depends on what they're shooting for with the Neo, like what it actually is, because they already have the PSVR that's coming out, and it's going to have an additional thing that you connect to your PS4. So it's not like you can't use the PlayStation VR unless you need a Neo.
Right.
So they're definitely they're going full bore with the PlayStation VR. So it just kind of depends on what is the Neo just 4K focused, or are they actually making something that's doesn't require that additional box, for the PlayStation VR. It's just you can do, I guess it kind of just depends on what they're actually shooting for with the Neo.
Yeah,
whatever it ends up being.
I'm pretty sure the additional box is going to stay either way. I think it's just going to be an augmentation either way. It might be why the specs for the Neo weren't crazy or whatnot, is that they were counting on it being able to have some synergy with the VR. But again, who knows for sure.
Yeah. The announcement was pulled, so we have no idea. But all right, gents, this has been a lot of fun. We are deep into this discussion, but it's been great times. Thank you for your insights. Where can we find you online, Joe?
I am on Twitter at JangoFett25, and if you want to watch me stream, it's the same name, JangoFett25 on Twitch.
On Twitch. All right, cool. Jason?
On Twitter, I'm the J, the letter SUN, and I'm working on a presence on Twitch as we speak.
All right, cool. I am Caleb, and you can find me at Geeko Supremo on Twitter, and I technically have a Twitch account under the same name, but don't really look for much action there. I don't stream very much. Cool. Thank you for listening to Around the Water Cooler's extra long episode about E3, and we will talk to you again soon.
And don't forget Robots Attack.
Oh, right. Yes, our more regular show, Robots Attack, on Mondays, 7 to 9-ish on KSCU 103.3 FM, The Underground Sound, or kscu.org.